Everybody's attention, please. Good evening. This is the Camden Select Board meeting for Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. A reminder that we are live streaming on YouTube, and we have a webinar in play with Zoom. If you're interested in either link, actually, you can go to the town website under Select Board and look at the packet on the agenda, and that both links are on the agenda. I'm not going to go through the detail because I don't see a lot of people at the moment on Zoom, but please understand on Zoom, if you would like to participate, please, it's preferred. If you please raise your hand, do not use Q&A. I'm sorry, you can use Q&A, but we may not always get to them, and if they're not addressed, they are not on the public record. Do not use the chat function, please. So with that, I'd like to commence the agenda with the first item, which is any public comment on non-agenda items. Anybody here would like to speak to something that's not in the agenda? Not seeing anybody, we'll move to item 2, which is the approval of the board minutes from October 4th, 2022. I have a motion or comments on the minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the October 4th board.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? 5-0, thank you. We have 2 items for public hearing tonight regarding liquor licenses. Before I go through the long diatribe of process, is there anybody here or on Zoom who will be speaking to, if you're on Zoom, just raise your hand, speaking to either the item for the quarter deck or KC Enterprise or Snow Dogs at Snowball?
Snow Dogs is...
Is what?
Snow Dogs was...
Yeah, he was just going to step out for a second. So.
Oh, okay. I'll go through. Well, is he coming back to speak? Okay. In that case, well, the reason is because the process for a public hearing is for the benefit of the select board to get input from the public on any issue we're adjudicating on, a pro, con, or just speak to it. We would ask anybody in the public who would like to speak to any one of these issues to please let us know. Please be courteous. Please limit your comments to about 3 minutes, please. And after everybody who has requested to speak from the public, I will close the public portion and on that matter and revert to the select board. There will be no further questions, input from the public unless a select board member has a question of somebody who was speaking previously. So with that, I would open up the public comment on quarter deck doing business as Cuzzies at 21 Bayview Street. Is there anybody for the public who would like to make a comment on this liquor license application? Not hearing any, I will close the public session and revert to deliberation by the select board. Select board, do you have any comments, questions, or a motion to approve or disapprove?
I have a comment. So I think it's the second time that we get no premise diagram for a liquor application recently. Oh, unless...
Yeah, there is.
It's there.
Oh, it's the supplemental.
It is there. Yeah, it's there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not in the right order. So I have no
Correct.
comments.
That's right.
I was ready to answer that.
Other comments? I have a motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the liquor license for quarter deck.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Not hearing any of those in favor. 5-0, thank you. The second license application is KC Enterprise, Inc., doing business as Snow Dogs at the Snowball. I can speak.
But do you want to wait for him to come back?
Yeah, should I?
You'll probably have to do that whole public hearing spiel again, so don't worry about it unless you guys have questions.
Well, we can just, let's go forward.
No, I do think we have questions.
No, that's okay. We can have questions. This is the public portion only to be answered by, well, if we have to, I'll delay it. But if you have questions that the owner should answer or the holder, then we'll have to change it. I'll close the public portion and revert to discussion and approval or disapproval by the select board. Tommy said you have questions.
I just, on this application, the spelling on the name, it's spelled, there's 2 different ways, Doppet or Doppelt. The floor plan is, I mean, I know the Snowball well. It's pretty sloppy, to be honest with you. We either need to get rid of that portion of it, or require something a little bit better than that. Anybody who knows the floor plan of the Snowball knows that pretty well. And then I noticed in the way that's listed for the gross food sales, it says that I'm sorry, I'm trying to scroll through this at the same time I'm speaking. So there's a discrepancy between selling liquor, malt liquor, I believe it says, which I assume beer, and then, but there's no income from that? There's no gross income? All the gross income is from the food?
It's new to him this year.
I understand. I just think that either we need to take these applications seriously, or we need to
Well,
not get rid of them.
On that one, what you're saying is he didn't have malt liquor, therefore has no revenue from last year on it.
I just want to clarify.
I think
Sorry, Janice, go ahead.
those liquor licenses are state forms, they're not ours. All we need to do is a public hearing, if you approve it or disapprove it. If there's a problem with the application, the state will contact you.
So I should probably repeat that for the live stream so that.
I can say it. So Janice made the point that the liquor licenses are a function of the state. This is just a public hearing. You're not actually
the
approving
license.
or
The state does.
rejecting them. It's the state that does it, and it's their forms. And if there's, an issue with the way that an applicant has filled them out, then the state gets back in touch with the applicant and asks them to change it.
So fundamentally, we're just testing the public waters of what's going on with this
We're
establishment.
just more input for the
And
state.
people have in the past come in and spoken against liquor licenses because of certain issues, and that's the purpose of these hearings. But if there's anything missing, we can certainly note it, Tom, and put it in the notes. There's not a problem with doing it. We've done that before.
So, I mean, again, clarification, his name, Doppet or Doppelt? It's spelled two different ways all over the application.
Doppelt.
But there's several places in the application where it's Doppet.
Well, he filled out his own
Yeah.
application, so.
Any other comments, Tom? We can put them in the notes.
Again,
The floor
the same
plan
ones that I said previously, the floor plan is, it's not accurate. We either have it for a purpose or we get rid of it. And I understand that maybe he didn't do it last year, but maybe I'm missing the point on this. I think he says $75,000 in food sales. He's also selling other things, but those are no expected gross income from alcohol sales.
That's not an expected number. It's a historic number. That's what Janice was saying. So he didn't have any until he has this liquor license this year. So he has no record of the 75,000 is what he sold last year at Snowball. The food, there was no liquor.
So is this, last year there was no alcohol to Snowball?
Yeah.
And we're back to doing it?
Yes. That's what's being proposed here. That's what's being proposed here.
I'm
yes.
just getting back to the basics
Well,
here. So,
but you're
and that's
right.
going to be in the lodge, or?
You're right, Allison, because the previous vendor did have a liquor license to sell wine and beer, I think.
Yeah, we went through quite a discussion about it.
Yeah. We did.
So it says the dollar amount of gross income for the licensure period that will end in the expiration date above, 5/1/23, $75,000.
I see what you're saying.
No beer, wine, or spirits. Zero. Again, I'm not going to stand in the way of somebody doing business, but this application is,
Right.
Now, was there a
Poorly
cost
done.
sharing? I mean, a
No.
revenue sharing?
Yeah.
I forget how we did that before. Did they have to share some of the alcohol revenue with us?
That would be on the
On the later agenda item.
the action item on the general
the agreement.
renewal agreement would specify that. We'd have to go through that. That's going forward.
7B.
Okay, so this is just
Liquor
the
license.
liquor license,
Yes.
but we have another opportunity to talk about the terms under which
Yes.
we're
Yes.
renewing the contract with,
Yes.
or,
Yes, the agreement, yes.
so, but we could do one without the other, without,
Well, the liquor license is just whether we want to allow liquor to be
Right.
served at the Snowball as it's been done in the past, or not. And that's what this one's about. And
the other thing would be under what terms we allow it?
well, in terms of revenue sharing and that kind of thing would be in the agreement.
No, but in what terms you mean, like?
Oh, what
But alcohol is
precautions?
regulated, right?
Right, so for most of the
The state,
Snowball's
right.
history, there's been no alcohol served there, and there was this whole long discussion, and lots of people had different opinions about where it should happen and how, and
That should be in the agreement.
what time they had to stop. And
Correct.
I just want to figure out, because sometimes we have that discussion at the same time that we have the liquor license.
But we have an agreement to
Approval.
discuss, right?
That's correct.
So we can, all those concerns can be discussed,
It should be under the agreement,
should be with
under
the
the action
agreement
item, yes.
as an action item, not liquor license, liquor license. Oh, but I guess, so Alison is basically, you're basically asking, should we give a liquor license to the Snow Dogs? at the
I guess I'm
Snowball?
trying to delineate which parts of the conversation is appropriate to have now and which parts are, because Bob said, what we're essentially saying is whether we want to have alcohol at Snowball right now.
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay, well, that kind of depends.
The state will issue the liquor license for Snow Dogs. That's where the approval comes from. We can reject, they still can approve it. But how it is implemented is in the past, that's in the agreement. As far as hours, location, anything else we discussed in past agreements should be in the agreement.
And so before it was Mark that was doing it.
That's correct.
And he had significant experience with, I forget whether he already had a liquor license with his other establishment. He certainly had one with Peter Atz, but we did talk about some things like serve safe training and,
It was more time, remember, we wanted to curtail to a certain hour, that kind of thing, 4 o'clock or something like that.
right, but it was already established that, like, I bartended and worked for Mark, actually, and everybody had to have serve safe training, you had to go through a thing.
Right.
Not that any of it really.
Right. But that should be in the agreement, I think.
Okay. Sometimes we do that with,
Well, we're getting back to focus on the liquor license. I think Tom makes a lot of good points about I think, as we've done in the past, is qualify any adjudication on the liquor license on correcting certain items or not. That's a decision the board has to make. Does anybody?
dollar amount of gross income for the licensure period that will end on the expiration
Yep,
date
that's-
above.
that's
So
what Tom's-
that's predicted for the future.
That's correct. That's what Tom is correct.
Yeah.
Tom is correct. We can ask a question of if you don't mind, coming up. We have the right to do that, even though we didn't speak earlier. We have a couple of questions on the application. And one of them is, Tom, I don't want to talk for you, but the quantification of food, but there's no quantification of expected revenue from liquor sales in the application.
I just don't know what to expect yet.
I guess part of that depends on the terms of the agreement with him.
Absolutely,
So what, if we are to say you can only serve until
Well-
such and such a time, then that impacts the,
Well, I mean,
Expected revenue?
if it said $20,000, it wouldn't change my thinking about, approving or not approving a license, but these things, need to fill in some guesstimation of what that might be.
It's just tough to say what revenue can be because I'm still talking with distributors.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm actually working with a distributor who was the distributor past, and we're trying to figure out the numbers from a
Right,
couple years
right,
ago.
right.
To kind of see what they were getting inventory-wise.
Right.
That's my thing.
The other comment was regarding the spelling of your name. It looks different on different places in the application. Yeah, it looks like DOPPET.
Oh, it's ELT.
I think we were just in a hurry to get it done. And, that was another comment. And I think thirdly was we were trying to be, it's a little difficult to sit in the select board. We don't actually approve liquor licenses, the state does. But we have a public hearing for people to speak to a liquor license. But we do look at these forms, and oftentimes the people have taken shortcuts, like the sketches are rather crude on where the liquor is sold. And that's kind of important to Snowball, because one of the issues we would discuss during the agreement discussion is where is liquor restricted to, the deck or not, and what hours, et cetera. That's why those things are important. And it just seems to us that the application should be cleaned up a little bit before the state gets it.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah, because I was just planning on doing the alcohol service in the dining room and on the patio. And that's why I just kind of
Right.
do that, and I wasn't.
Right, it needs to be specific, because, you know, you can have a liquor license, this has happened, where somebody is at a restaurant and they decided that people were waiting someplace, not in the restaurant, and they were giving them, you know, nice thing to do, give them a drink while they're waiting. Well, you're not allowed to do that, because it's not in the area defined. So it needs to be pretty accurate. It needs to be sketched so that the average person can understand the area you're talking about. So that was the other one. Did I miss anything, board? No, those are the three. So I would, you know, we'll look at this liquor license now and discuss the agreement when we get to it, because there are other restrictions that are very important to us for controlling alcohol and et cetera, et cetera. But I think that a good cleanup would be a good idea.
Wouldn't it in some ways make more sense for the application to be done after we've done the agreement? Because if we're,
If you
there was some,
prefer.
I'm trying to, it would be nice maybe if Beth could give us just a reminder of what was agreed on before, so, you know, how it happened in that. I think it was it only 1 year that the Snowball?
No, Mark
or-
had it for probably 3, but after the first year.
Oh, nobody's going to be able to hear you.
Yeah, you'll have to.
Because if we had limited it to certain sections, and if we were going to do that again, that would make, you know, that would be part of his diagram.
So Mark had it for at least 3 years.
For 3.
And the first year we had the time, like he couldn't open until 2 o'clock and he could only go to a certain time. And it was something that we also, the board left in Audra and my hands to have any special events, that we could approve that. After the first year trial, everybody felt like it was managed well, that we could, the kitchen concession and myself could decide what alcohol sales looked like after that.
Okay.
So that's where we are now.
And did you see, you know, what was your experience?
I
with
thought it was fine. I mean, you would have the family that goes out, does their however many runs, and then has a beer with their lunch or whatever
Sure.
it is that they're having,
Sure.
so.
Sure.
And I honestly probably wasn't going to be opening the taps or anything until noon anyway.
Right, no, understood. It's just, like I said, one of the things I know we really wanted to be clear about was, back then, was it in the physical location of a glass of beer or a bottle of beer or a glass of wine. That's why the sketch is very important.
Absolutely. Well, the state requires him to have locked space, and there's all these things that we actually have been talking about. so.
Okay.
Out on the deck, who makes sure that people don't wander around with a beer?
That I don't know.
Like
That would
off,
be-
like off the deck and stuff like
Right,
that.
right.
I guess we would put up signage.
Yeah, with Mark, we helped Mark with some signage, and we posted it at the ways you can get off the deck.
That's what Mark did. So I think it's okay to adjudicate on the license first and then the agreement, based on what Beth has said. I think we've had a couple of years' experience here, but we certainly want to monitor it.
And have you had serve-safe training?
Yeah,
or
I'm surf safe management training or certified.
And anybody that would be serving would
I
also
can
be, or
make it
it's a
happen.
pretty
I'm still
easy?
working on staffing right now, as is everybody. So just, I've got 2 people nailed
Right.
down, and I can get them serve safe certified in between now and then, if that's what's
Yeah.
required.
Well, it's a good
That would
idea.
make sense.
It's a good idea.
It's fairly simple, as you know.
Already is, because she
Okay.
already works with
All right.
food and stuff like that.
Let's just proceed with the liquor license. Thank you. We'll be talking about the agreement in a few minutes. So I think we, the board, we can certainly, I would suggest that, as we did in the past with a previous license about the sketch, just qualify our judgment, or approval, disapproval on those 2, we can repeat those 2 or 3 things we just mentioned as part of the qualification. I think that's adequate for the meeting minutes and for the record.
You want me to make a motion?
Yeah, do you
I
need,
make a motion, we approve the liquor license for Snow Dogs, provided that a new, more detailed sketch of the premises is added to the application, and that Snow Dog, and also the provisions linked to the agreements.
Spelling just cleaned up a
And
little bit
and
to make
make
it
the
legible.
spelling of your last name consistent.
what about the certification thing? We should mention that.
I think the
too.
certificate, the safe serve,
An agreement.
we can
okay.
put that
All
in
right.
the agreement.
All right. Those Snow Dogs at the Camden Snowball. Are there any objections to these two items from the board? Not hearing any, they're hereby adopted. However, since we adopted them, did you want to say something, since you came here, and make a comment?
I'd like to introduce you to Mark, my driver.
Please come up, Mark, so we can everybody know who you are. Now that you're officially working for
Wolfie's Wheels.
Wolfie, see, I can't even read it. Wolfie's Wheels.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mark Bradstreet, local lobsterman here in Camden, last nearly 10 years. I live in Lincolnville, and I'm looking for part-time employment working for Chris Wolf, Wolfie's Wheels.
Cool.
If you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Oh, just
How do we get a cab?
Well, you go to the Snowball.
We'll have cards when you walk out.
oh, cool.
Wolfie's got
It's
cards.
a well-needed service in our town.
Very much needed.
So how's it going? It must be going well enough that you've brought on another driver.
Yes, 3 weeks ago, I wondered if I made the right decision. Now I don't know how I'm going to keep up. Portland, I've been to Portland 3 times in the last 2 days.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah, yeah. Here you go, Mark. Will you see that he's like Portland? Get your card, please.
There's a big demand for transportation to Portland, especially the airport and the bus station.
Bangor Airport, Augusta Airport.
Thank you.
I've done
Excellent.
private car service to the restaurants from the hotels. I've taken people from the boats on sightseeing tours and leaf keeper tours. I can do a lighthouse tour if they wish. So,
Oh, with Mark maybe, right? He can take,
yeah, well, that'd be great.
he can take you on the boat.
Person to do that.
One step at a time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That kind of reveals part of my motive is that once I get them in the cab, I'm looking to sell them other services.
Yeah, maybe fill lobsters too. Well, great. Well,
And a few lobsters.
welcome to our streets.
Well, I just think that's just wonderful. I think you're such a nice presence down at the harbor, too. And, I mean, people get so much joy out of asking questions and watching what you guys do. And just great to have you expanding your services. So, thanks.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
And may I inquire about the status of Randy Gagne's? He had to do some background check, or is that all been processed, or?
Must have gone pretty well.
All done.
Because it says
Okay.
here,
Otherwise, it wouldn't be here.
Familiar with politics, so thank you.
It's not so much the politics, it's
just
more
process.
regulation.
Right.
But anyway,
Yeah, we wouldn't wait to spring that on you here, hopefully, if there was a problem.
That could be fun, though.
I think our application, the questions asked, once again, it's just really inappropriate, a lot of the
weird.
things. Like asking people if they've been voluntarily checked into a mental institution in the last 5 years, and things like, just because somebody has gotten mental health services doesn't, I mean, that leads to, that, it just has a real
All right.
nasty kind of vibe to
Right.
it, so,
but we digress.
other things. Well, it's-
She says that every time. She's very
This is a
consistent.
new one, and I know we're going to redo all of the
Yeah, it's
applications
all,
and stuff, but it's
it's
just,
ordinance.
we do really need to do
A
that.
lot of work. On to our action items, the first of which is the approval of the renewal annual agreement for the snow dogs for the Snowball Concessions. The agreement is in the packet. I'm sure we've all read it. Are there any comments, board, that we would like to discuss amongst us or with our representative of Snow Dogs here tonight?
Is it just out of order in the packet and I'm missing it? Because I go right
Oh.
from the,
5A. Tab.
I mean, I shouldn't. Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we got them flipped. Wait,
is it above the?
It's
Yeah,
33,
got it. Above the,
Bylaws.
yeah.
above the bylaws.
yeah, it should be, it should be.
It's above the
It's-
taxi cab.
Below.
Maybe I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm
Oh,
on
no,
the-
no,
I'm on
above the
state.
taxi cab, you're right. It's before the taxi cab.
Okay, yeah.
Page 33.
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. Questions, board?
So I have one question about dates.
Yes.
Because on the liquor license, the date goes to May 1st. This agreement goes to
April
April
15, I
15th.
think.
And then the Snowball, April 30th, no later than April 30th. So what are the operation dates?
That, we've
But,
always,
okay, but
this agreement has always had December 1st through April 15th. It doesn't have to coincide with a liquor
Doesn't have to
license.
coincide,
Well,
okay. We're
remember,
happy
the
with
liquor
that.
license is tied to an establishment. If the establishment is not open on April 16th, the liquor license does no good.
right,
So
okay,
they're disconnected.
okay.
Just want to say, the liquor license actually is
You gotta wait until you get to the thing, because
Please.
Starts in November, right?
I actually did talk to some of the liquor representatives, and the liquor license is actually tied to the business entity
Yep.
and not to the establishment. So like if, once my lease ends and I'm no longer renting a space,
You can still have a liquor
the
license.
liquor license isn't tied to the space. It's only tied to my business.
Yeah,
So I can't, like, keep you guys from doing your parties and stuff in the off-season and stuff like that and having to, like,
No, I understand, but if your agreement expires on April 15th at the Snowball, this license is tied to that facility. That's why the sketches are in there. So that is tied to it. So on April 16th, you're not serving alcohol to another establishment.
that's correct.
That's all I was saying.
Oh, okay.
And I probably confused you again.
was that a concern?
Not to me.
What if the season goes to April 30th? Do we ever go to April 30th?
No, never.
Okay.
You can stay up here, but
Yes.
there's bound to be other questions, so.
I hurt my foot and walking is not
Otherwise,
the best.
you're gonna get tired. Other questions, Sophie, or anybody else?
So I was wondering, are there any, so I understand we're going to put constraints on the sale of alcohol for like regular weekends. What happens at the Toboggan Nationals?
That's still.
Do we have a different, it's an event license, so it's
Correct.
different, okay.
Completely different agreement for the vendors who come with trailers to serve beer and whatever they serve.
Okay,
Yeah, now if I were to like do a beer tent down by the chute or something like that, I would have to get like an extension on my license.
Okay.
To like
cool.
that space,
Yep.
tent space.
Okay,
Now that brings back that question that we discussed earlier about Allison certification. Should we insert something in this agreement that requires certification of anybody serving alcohol on the premises?
I mean, to me, that makes sense. It's a town-owned,
I mean, if the owner doesn't have a problem with that, I think it's a smart idea.
I think
very easy to get it.
it's just SurfSafe, right? Is that all?
Yeah.
Yeah, SurfSafe is.
An online training.
It's online training. Yeah, they can do it in person. I think there's a class once a month in Augusta. It's. I can pay my. I don't. Yeah.
You don't even have to go to the online, I mean, to the in-person one.
Yeah. It's all online now.
Are we going to follow up on that?
I can.
I'm just saying, there's no sense to make it a stipulation if it's not going to be.
Well, no, I
like-
totally.
It'd be Beth's job to
I totally agree. It should be.
sure it happens.
It should be the responsibility of the town to follow up that actually occurs. Now, the question is, I'm not sure where to stick in the agreement, but.
Probably 20.
Number 20?
Yeah, so it says, number 20 is Snow Dogs has the option to serve beer and wine on the property during winter operations. Snow Dogs will obtain and maintain in good standing a license to serve beer and wine with the state of Maine, and we could add a sentence saying,
including,
Snow Dogs will
Ensure.
ensure staff serving beer and wine have served safe training.
That okay with you?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. I think, thanks to Beth's
Is there anything,
clarification.
what's the revenue, what are they paying to?
So the revenue split will be 4%
I
of,
saw that in here someplace.
where is it?
It's on the last page,
Is it?
37.
yeah, Schedule A.
I don't see it.
4%,
Total revenue. So that would take
Oh,
into
yeah,
account.
yes. It's a proposed revenue with Snowball would be 4% of total concession revenue,
So that's gross sales.
everything.
And that's the same as it's been.
It's the same.
I didn't remember the percentage, but I remember it being on everything.
Well, it's great that you're willing to do this. I know we're not having our doors beaten down at this point.
Well, it's what's keeping the service industry down is staffing.
Right.
And housing. So housing for said staffing.
It hasn't gotten better.
No, I'm literally losing, you know, I've just tried to contact some of the people who were working for me last year, and they're just, yeah, they're like, I can't find a place where I'm at right now, let alone a place in Camden or in the remote area of Camden. So, like, I could pay them all the money in the world. If they can't find a place to live, it doesn't make a difference.
Understood,
So,
understood. Any other comments, board?
I just want to, I'm sorry, I didn't hear well earlier. So is beer and wine served starting at a particular time in the day? You said that, but I couldn't hear you.
yeah, I was, just for staffing purposes and stuff like that, noon is what I was
Noon?
thinking.
Noon to
Just for staffing and stuff like that, because from my graphs from last year, the Snowball doesn't really pick up until about 11:30 noon anyway. So.
With people that drink beer.
Exactly, yeah, there might be some coffee drinkers who want a little Kahlua or something, but don't have Kahlua, so it's.
Right,
yeah.
right. I think that's reasonable.
Cool.
Any other questions?
That's all the question I have.
Questions, motion?
I make a motion that we approve the agreement between the Snowball and Snow Dogs for the 2022-2023 season with the changes requested to include the Serve Safe training for the workers.
Workers that are serving alcohol?
Right, anybody, yeah.
And I think that's the only thing we added. That's the only one.
That's the only one I've heard, correct.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? 5-0. Good luck and hang in there.
Thank you.
It's,
Thank you.
hopefully we get snow.
Seriously.
Oh, man.
I know it's not easy. On to our recurring select board item, which is the approval of the select board bylaws, which were slightly modified based on comments last time. Do I have a motion or so we can discuss or?
I think there was, did we, oh, I can't remember. This is all a blur now.
We tabled it.
We tabled it,
Yeah.
right.
So we brought it back up for approval.
Yeah, and I think Audra and I added all the comments back into it.
You did, at least the ones I
So
noted.
unless anyone has a comment or a question,
Let's make a motion and we can discuss it during discussion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the bylaws for the select board.
Do I have a second?
I'll do a second.
Stephanie, second. Discussion.
I have a few things I'd like to bring up.
Sure.
One is something that I saw in the draft that I do not see in the, what I believe
What
here,
is
what
that,
we're
Tom?
voting on tonight, and that is removal of chair or vice chair. I believe there was a line in there that I don't see in this. Reason why I didn't like the way it was written, but I don't see it in this particular draft or this one we're voting on tonight.
Fine.
If nobody objects to it, I like the way that's written now.
I have no problem with it. But as far as, this business is about, the chair and the judge, if the majority of the board has a fire, well, that's what the issue was, 4-1, right? It was 4
Yeah.
votes
I mean,
required.
like, I played out the scenario in my head,
Hold on, are we talking about removal of chair or vice chair? Or are we talking
yeah,
about?
removal of chair or vice chair, which is not in this,
We removed it.
you removed it. Okay, I mean, if nobody else wants to discuss it, this is the way I want it, but I'm happy to defend my position if anybody wants to hear why okay.
I think, go ahead, Al.
But the issue around the removal of the chair or the vice chair was the 4 votes,
Yeah.
where the charter usually has a majority of 3. So
Yeah.
I think if we abide by the charter, then that proposal to
Yeah.
have 4 votes to remove a chair or vice chair doesn't,
That doesn't make a difference.
it hasn't,
And if
makes no
yeah,
difference. I mean, it's happy to discuss it, but
No,
I think the charter provides for it, and I'm not sure it adds anything if we have a
I totally
specific.
agree.
So we're saying the chair or vice chair could be removed with 3 votes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
that's,
but
I mean,
with,
that makes sense to me.
but if you look at the charter, it also states that there has to be a,
3/5 majority.
not just that, it has to be a, oh geez, I don't,
Yeah.
it uses
Three
a-
people or-
no, it has to be the word that is escaping my memory, but it has to be a meeting and a discussion. It can't just be,
No, it has to be an agenda item, and it has to be voted on
it's
by
the
the
same as
board.
removing any member of the select board, and it's, I don't want to call it a trial. It's right in the charter.
We cannot remove a member of the select board.
Correct. So, well, whichever. All I'm saying is I already, I felt the bar was already established as fairly high.
Okay.
So my next point is 3G on page 1.
3G.
Bingo.
I'm going to give a specific example of why I object to this one. There was one, and I can't recall the exact.
3G on page.
Members are to require a forum?
Board members seeking a legal opinion and advice will make their request. This is on page 1 of the
Yeah.
bylaws.
It's section
What?
Oh, section,
2.
I'm sorry,
Officers
section,
and duties, and it's
section, sorry,
alineate
2G.
G.
Sorry, 2G, thank you.
on
Board
the
members
page.
seeking a legal opinion and advice will make their request through the select board chair, who will initiate contact with the town attorney through the town manager. There was one issue that came up earlier this year since I joined the board in June, where I had a question for the town attorney about specific legal implications for if the board, the board voted one way or another. And I just happened to be in the town office. I stopped in, I talked to Bill about it, and he gave me a very brief explanation of the way he saw it. And it helped me formulate my opinion on the way I was going to vote on that issue. And I would object to that right being taken away. I don't think in any way these bylaws should be taking away select board members.
The select board has, in the past was even worse because there was we was on an hourly basis. That's really where the generation has
It wasn't
happened.
here, no.
And we would never want everybody. One of the problems is if we know that a person is going to speak to somebody about an issue, you're all of a sudden, myself included, you have information that the rest of the board doesn't have. Now, if you're asking a procedural question, nobody's going to stop you from doing that. That's fine. This is not a whip cracking thing, Tom. This is about going in and getting information on an individual basis, or Audra has many times in emails said when one of us requests information, I provide information to the whole board, not just individuals. That's where this is driven from. Allison, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've done that any number of times too, when I just happen to be here and I happen to see Bill, and it's like, oh, hi, how's everything going? And then I ask him something kind of off the cuff. My understanding would be that we're not trying to stop conversation with Bill. It would be more
No, he's-
directing Bill to come up with a legal opinion
Right.
on something that, I think it was, I remember when I first joined the select board, we had the problem of not only board members, but
Others.
committee members.
Yes. Yes, there
And
has
we
to
were
be a
charged
gate.
by the hour, and it was
There has to
this
be a gate.
constant thing of like, anybody was like, could just contact the town attorney and ask, and then we were getting these bills that were,
If you had a question about what state statute covers this area, no, ask them. It's no big deal. This is not trying to, this is just trying to remind us that communications, and I have to be really careful with this because I talk to Bill all the time about things. Because some of this stuff is, I need to transmit to the select board members because it's just not for my edification. So I think we're reading a little bit too much into it as far as restricting going. Nobody's going to slap you if you stop by and see Bill and ask me a basic question on where can I find this, or I was confused by this the other night, especially for, Stephanie and you are relatively new to the board. We have a little bit more experience with some of this stuff. If you have a question of Bill, not a lot more, we still get confused, but there's no
likely than
problem with
anybody
that, Tom. There's no problem with having a discussion with it.
Board members seeking a legal opinion / advice will take advice.
Right.
So
Legal advice.
Legal advice.
it's
not-
it's
it's not-
beyond just background information or like, how does this work? It's
Right.
like, I'd like an opinion on,
Whether we can
on-
sue snow dogs or whatever, that type of, and I'm not taking snow dogs as a,
Audra told me
Please
that
don't-
this wasn't okay, that we couldn't do this, and I'd like to know your legal opinion on
Yes.
whether
Yes,
it's,
that's what it's
you
about.
know-
Good point.
I
That's
guess
all it's about.
It's information that the entire board should have.
Yeah.
That if any one of you has it, it sort of,
Right.
it doesn't put you all on equal footing.
Right.
and it's about his time,
And
his
his
time,
time.
even though he's on salary.
Right.
When it's this kind of, I see it as a little bit the same thing as going to department heads and directing them to do something.
that's
Really,
correct.
that's supposed to go through the town manager because
Right.
it's a town staff person. And, if I'm going to ask Chief Farley a bunch of questions, I usually just run that by Audra.
Right. But if I run into Mr. X and Ms. Y, I run into Beth in the street and say, how things going to Snowball, I'm going to have a conversation with her. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to try to direct her at anything. That's all.
I mean, we're all
Yeah.
pretty practical because it's a
Yeah,
small town
you're just
and people
going
run
to,
into each
this
other.
is just trying to raise that flag on the legal thing, which can get a little dicey sometimes, Tom. It's not intended to stop you from talking to Bill, but certainly, yeah, legal advice, that's why.
Or telling him to research something.
Right, no, you can't do that. That's where, we can, but that has to go through this procedure.
I don't know, I think the wording is pretty broad here, seeking a legal
Is it-
opinion.
Well, I have to go to, does anybody else, a board?
Somebody would have to stop you. So the way
Yes.
that would happen
Yes.
would be some kind of thing would, you would say, I mean, this has probably happened in the past, maybe not, but, that if I were asking Bill a bunch of things and it started to be like, Bill's like tells Audra.
He will.
I'm spending all this time,
will.
Allison's asked me this and this and this. And then if it rose to the level of Bill,
Will-
saying this to Audra, then there might be a conversation, but I don't think it's,
Now, this is,
But also, I mean, we're
nobody's
lucky
going
to
to
have
stop
Bill.
you.
We're lucky to have Bill, because Bill also will stop you.
he will.
And Bill will say, Tom, this is a really great question, but I cannot address it with you right now.
He will.
Because
Right.
this needs to be shared with the entire select board,
Right.
either in a public,
Right.
in a select board
Yeah.
meeting or an executive session.
In that situation, you
And-
might
and-
want to ask me or Audra if you could, in that situation, but yeah, we're magnifying this way.
We could always
portion.
vote, too, to have,
Sure.
if, say
Right.
Bob doesn't want to ask Bill something, and,
Let Tom do it.
you say, I think there's this issue that we don't have clear legal guidance on.
Yep.
We could say, it could be an agenda item
True.
where we would vote.
What other
So
comments, Tom?
Let me give you a for instance, because this is fairly close to what my recollection is of that time that I did go into Bill's office. Stopping in the office and saying to the town attorney, what are the legal ramifications of this vote, pro or con?
You're asking for legal advice. I'm not sure what the decision was, pro or con, but and by the way, I trust.
will say something
I
if
trust
it's
Bill.
not.
You can go ask anything.
Yeah, but
you
we're
want.
talking about a town, Bill may not be the town attorney for,
Well,
this
we
is,
will instruct the town attorney at some day to do the same thing. He knows.
I mean, this, we have faith in Bill,
Yep.
it's fine, that's fine, but
Why is
that's,
this in there?
yeah.
If we have that.
Because we don't want people to go directly to Bill for every,
and when I'm formulating my opinion on how I'm going to vote on a particular topic, I'd like the opportunity to go into the town attorney's office and say, hey, if the board approves it, what do you see
Should
legally?
be
And
happening at a
Right,
meeting
and then we usually
publicly.
say, can we
That
have Bill
happens
at
at
the
a meeting.
meeting?
That does not happen in person. We as individual, we could have 5 people going to Bill and asking the repercussions of my vote. You don't do that.
But it isn't uncommon for us to say, we'd like to have Bill
Absolutely.
at the meeting.
Absolutely. That's the way it's done.
Because sometimes I don't like hearing things secondhand.
Right.
Sometimes when it's
Right.
just Bob or Audra, I mean,
Right.
I have lots of faith in Bob, but I don't like all of Bill's opinions to be secondhand
They're not
a lot of the
they're not
time.
black and
And I
white
like to be able to
either.
ask my own questions, and
Yeah, if you have an issue like that, you need to raise the flag so I can make sure he's
to
at the
come to a
meeting.
lot more select board
Well, I'm
meetings.
going to try to increase Bill's
Yeah, we need-
attendance
we
at the select board meetings, but that's the arena, when all 5 of us are here asking about any ramifications of a vote, not individually. So, other comments on this document?
It just
Tom, you had
seems
another
to
one you
me.
said.
I
I'm sorry,
do.
Stephanie?
It seems to me on that particular, in this conversation, that it's very ambiguous wording, and it says will make their request through the select board. That is a
Sure.
pretty final will do kind of thing. So if he interprets it different, you interpreted it different in this scenario,
Bill will be the gatekeeper.
Right, but some people might read that and interpret it too literally and just assume that they have oh gosh, I was in the office
Not
and I just
vote.
had to walk by Bill's office and, here we're all saying, oh, it's actually really casual and it's not
Right.
like that, but,
because that's what was brought to us when
Right.
we had our induction was.
Just, well,
ask
we
if
can
you have
wordsmith
any
this,
questions.
we can word this thing for another select board meeting if we want to. This is the third, but I think you're way overplaying this. That's just my
Well,
personal
you're on the
opinion.
inside, so you.
No,
I
I'm
mean,
not
we're-
actually,
you
no,
might
I'm
have a
not.
different
No, I'm
perspective.
not actually.
Do we want to change it so it says a formal legal opinion / advice?
Yep,
Just add formal,
Yep,
we'll
that's fine.
take care of, and with the understanding that clarifications on processes and procedures is fine.
well, just say formal.
Isn't it the same as any department head? What is the language we use for department
Department
heads?
heads.
I mean, I'm not allowed to go to, Randy and say, Randy, I'd like a report on,
Yeah.
how you're going to solve this
But we're not
issue
directing,
or.
this is not about directing the attorney. This
But
is
it's
about
very-
getting information from the attorney.
But wait, on a point of clarification there, the organizational chart, I didn't think Bill was in that, I thought he was a separate branch of the organizational chart.
Well, technically, all of the, like, the police chief
town
and all
employee.
of those are too, but,
There's no line to the select board to the town attorney.
I mean, he actually works for us rather
But,
than.
yeah, that's what I didn't see that. Maybe we need to go over that again, but the organizational chart shows Audra and all the department heads, but then
Yep, so Bill
he's over here.
is, he represents the select board, so as a group, you can direct him, which is different than like,
Right.
Beth. You can't direct Beth, even if, Beth,
Right, okay.
like if she stood up here at a meeting and you said, Beth, we want you to do X, Y, and Z, you really can't do that. You have to tell me to tell Beth to do that. It's different with Bill. You can direct Bill to do things,
As a
just like
board.
you can direct me to do things.
As a board.
Yes.
But if we all get into doing it individual, we have to come up with a method for how we direct Bill.
I'm not suggesting we direct him. I'm just saying ask questions.
It-
As long, I mean,
know,
I think it's if it doesn't turn into a, different board.
So, no, but let's take a good, one hypothesis. There is no question you would not ask the board chair of Bill. There is only one question you would ask Bill that you would want the board chair to know is, how do I get rid of the board chair?
True.
So any other in that.
No, not.
Yes. There is no reason.
Well, it might be,
No,
Bob had
there
this-
is no reason
You
to
know-
hide anything from
I
the
don't think we're
chair.
saying to hide.
No, but that's transparency. If you have a question about a process, clarification, the impact of a vote, your first line is Bob or the chair, not Bill.
I mean, sometimes that works and
I
sometimes
don't. I
it
really
doesn't.
don't think
You know,
that.
what's really frustrating to me is we wasted an hour and a half at a workshop. None of this came up.
Well-
Wait, let me finish. The last two select board meetings, we had a similar discussion. This item, for example, never came up. Why don't we just put this on the table and leave it permanently? Because we can table it and spend the whole night talking about wordsmithing this thing, which should have been done at a workshop where everybody should have read this thing and tried to understand it. We didn't do that. Oh, no, sorry, Allison, that's a fact. That's a fact.
Well, those of us who weren't involved in writing the document, it does take time to process it.
That's
And
the
you've
purpose of
made
the
mention
workshop.
many times that we're new members of the board, which we are. When I went to the Select Board Bylaws meeting, I didn't even realize this was a new document. I thought we were reviewing an existing document for editing. So for those who were involved in writing the document, this is all things that you've thought over well and you've had time to consider.
what
But
does-
for those of us who are just reading it, and now I've noticed that things have changed since our last one without actually any debate. Things were deleted from this
This one
document.
was changed since the last time?
Yes, the things that I brought up via email,
The board members was changed?
The vote on the removing the chair.
No, the legal advice we're talking about was that
no, but what I'm
changed?
saying is things within this document have changed.
Yeah, but this
So
one
to
hasn't.
say that we aren't prepared for this
This one
is not
did not
true.
change, Tom. This one did not change.
A
This one's
tabled
the same-
item doesn't mean that we only come back and talk about the items that made it be a tabled item.
No, but how many times do you have to
As
rediscuss?
many times as it takes.
All right, fine, keep
Even if
talking.
it takes 6 more times.
What does the
It's
board,
very
thing is that
important.
what does the
I'm
board
raising
want to
my
do
hand.
with
How-
this item then? What wording do you want?
I mean, Alison has her hand
And
up.
I thought we agreed on some kind of hand-raising format.
You-
I have more success when I interrupt.
When I see you.
Go ahead, Allison.
I understand the frustration about having to talk about things over and over, and I know that I'm a frequent offender of wanting to talk more than others about certain things, but at the same time, I've also experienced that these types of issues come up outside of select board meetings a lot as individual situations arise, and it does take our time then also. And so spending a little bit more time right now, working through some of the scenarios is, I think,
I have no
time
problem with that,
well
Allison.
spent.
I'm asking, what is recommended for this item G? What's the wording of it?
I would accept Audra's addition, formal.
Which is formal?
The word formal, that makes it more clear.
Okay. Next comment, Tom.
And this has been brought up once before, I believe.
Yes, you did.
And that is Section 5C.
See.
I'm wondering if we were supposed to add a D there just for
Five-
little
which one,
procedure.
Tom?
5C, participation in voting.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me get to it. Five, oh, yeah, go ahead. C.
So I'm not sure if that's supposed to be a D there, just for procedure.
No, you're absolutely right.
But I do think we ought to have the ability to vote present, or, not that I intend to, or abstain, but I think a member ought to have that right without having to go through the chair for cause.
I mean, how would that happen if Bob's like refuses to excuse somebody from voting? It's like you get forced into voting at the,
I'd just take it
it's
out.
probably not necessary. I
I'd
mean,
just take it out.
I agree. It's not.
Take out D. What's supposed to be D.
And that is all, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Allison, your comment.
I have one comment that I have not brought up previously before tonight.
You'll pay for it later. Go
But I
ahead.
may have missed it. There's this recording secretary thing.
Where is it?
Why,
Meetings?
shall appoint a recording secretary that will maintain a permanent record of the blah, blah, blah. I thought we had that before, and then we got rid of it because we really,
Isn't that meeting minutes?
Yes.
yeah, but are we appointing a recording secretary? It seems like that person changes all the time without us. I mean, we want a new person. Are we going to have to appoint the?
And we never
We don't
have.
appoint her,
Normally, we leave that to,
you mean we don't
just-
appoint her at every meeting?
that's not the way we've been doing it. Or, not at every meeting, but sometimes it's been, I guess that's my question, first of all. Is that Janice's role right now, and it's been Caitlin in the past, and it's not a
Caitlin's
member of some boards have a board member that is.
Caitlin's doing it now, isn't she?
Okay. Well,
I think it's a good
Well,
point.
clearly we
and
don't really
I
know.
think you should remove it because
Because
it's like whoever we can get to do meeting minutes.
We never appointed a recording secretary, I ever recall. It's like,
No, but we don't appoint her at every
And I
meeting.
think-
That's the
Mrs.
point.
Allison.
I think it was put in there because it was a charter,
If it's in the charter, we don't need to repeat it here.
yeah.
most boards are getting rid of that part because it used to always be a board.
Which one
Member.
is it, Allison?
We'll find it and
We'll find it.
we'll find it.
E on page,
E?
it's section 2E.
2E. All right, delete 2E. 2,
Yeah, that's fine.
yep, delete 2E.
Perfect.
Anything else?
No, we're good.
Motion,
The motion was made and seconded.
but these items weren't.
So I make a motion that we accept the bylaws with the following change. So we're,
There are three
so we're,
changes.
3 changes on section 2G,
Yes,
that we add the word formal,
correct.
so that G reads, board members seeking a formal opinion/advice will make their request through the select board chair, who will initiate contact with the town attorney through the town manager. That's the first change.
Correct.
The second change is in section 2E,
E,
that we remove
yep,
section 2E entirely and not name a board
Correct.
secretary. And the third,
was D, which was something?
5C,
5C.
or 5D,
So,
5D.
In section 5,
It wasn't
that
called.
we remove the last alinea that is not numbered, but should be D, that be removed.
Okay, that's the motion. Have a second. Motion made and second. Further discussion? No? Come on, let's keep it going.
That's the spirit.
I mean, if I had something, I would.
Look how flexible Bob is. He wants to keep talking.
Aren't you glad you didn't give up, Bob?
I can give
Yeah,
you a
this
couple.
feels
There's a
good,
bit-
doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway,
Consensus.
with that, all those in favor? 5-0, thank you. And by the way, just to underline, this policy it can be modified by the select board at any time.
How would we get that on the agenda?
You would have to beg and pay a lot of money. No, you just have to request it.
Section what?
Because there are items I've already thought about that should be in here, but that's next year.
Oh, let's hear him. Come on.
Well,
It's just been approved.
well, it's about
Moving on.
the black tie for men and floor length
Oh,
gowns
the
for
dress
women.
code. We
Yeah,
should
right.
really, circle back on
All
that.
right, so onward and sideways to the next item, which would be. I've lost myself on that. What?
Steamboat landing commercial
Yeah,
uses.
it's correct. It's a discussion item on the steamboat landing use going forward.
I see that my esteemed colleague Josh is here. Do we want to have?
Is,
Josh is here.
where is he? Oh, he's hiding in the corner.
Yeah.
Oh, devil. Maybe that would be a good idea, Josh, to start off with we already presented once what the Harbor Committee found in terms of, we were trying to evaluate the uses issues with Steamboat Landing, and you did, the report is in our document. Maybe you could summarize that again for us. That would be a good idea. And reintroduce yourself for all of us that don't know you.
Joshua Moore, Chairman of the Harbor Committee. Good evening. It was a little while ago that we created that document, so I need to sort of remember it.
You want it?
No, that's all right. Basically, here's this for a summary. Steamboat Landing is well-used, much loved by a lot of different people. It's been there since 2001, I believe, in its formal capacity. It is certainly showing its age. The dock system especially is it's in disrepair. It needs some pretty significant work at this point. However, the main thrust, I think, of the document was to say that I would say it's at capacity for its usage. Everyone so far has been wonderful about working with each other, and if someone's got to stay a little longer than 10 minutes, then they work around that and they help them out and that kind of thing. But that as usage has increased year after year, I think that's becoming a little bit more challenging. There it is. There's that cool old photo. What else? The parking area, that I think it's about 1/4 of an acre, that's kind of around the corner on Cove Road, has done some work, I guess you could say, but it's A, hard to find, and B, even harder to find out how to park in it. It's pretty overgrown. What else? So we presented at the end some sort of short-term and long-term recommendations, if I recall correctly. One being sort of maintain the status quo, which would be the mix of commercial fishermen who use the facility, recreational users, and the commercial people who use the ramp, obviously, to haul boats professionally. That, I'm pleased, I think Steve can report, but I'm pretty sure that's not how the ramp looked after this last storm. But that was after last October's storm, I think. And it's not an uncommon view. So the ramp itself, the concrete blocks are in pretty rough shape. The staples that kind of hold them together have started really rusting. And we replaced some of them earlier in the year.
Summer, right? Before the season, we
Before the
replaced
season, yep.
some of
And I
them.
think maybe that's why it was able to.
But it needs a redesign.
It needs a redo. It needs a lot of work. Look at, as we said there, do a sort of overall plan for the area over there. Look at where the property lines are, because it does border private property on both sides. There there's been an increasing demand for dinghy storage over there. So I know that Steve is especially interested in getting a little bit more of that going on. Some basic stuff like some equipment that we thought should be there in the immediate term. There's no life ring there. If somebody goes into the ocean, there's no way to throw them anything or anything like that. Just scanning through here. Parking, the parking study, I think parking over there is sort of a primary problem.
Yeah.
Parking and access is a primary problem. There has been, in recent years, there has been some passenger use, commercial passenger vessel use over there. And really the tour buses are the problem, obviously. The tour buses there have been some pretty significant conflicts with the neighbors over there. with the-
Pictures documenting.
the tour buses.
The tour buses parking across from, along Steamboat.
It's been a while, but.
Oh, no.
No, there was. And then, sort of long-term is really just look at the whole operation and say, what can we do here? There's climate change implications for this, as storms are getting more active. We do need to look at that. There's been a couple of projects that have been proposed. Lyman Morse's project is one of them, as well as the breakwater project
the Army
on the
Corps
outer
mentioned.
harbor, both of which would have an impact on this thing. So some other things that we thought were important to bring in. How's that for a summary,
Very good, thank you.
considering that was 5 months ago?
Right.
Government moves fast.
Like molasses running uphill in the summer.
But, so I want, again, I think the Harbor Committee has done a really great job at looking at every aspect of Steamboat Landing, and the recommendations they make are quite sensible. I think in the sense of allowing public usage, understanding, that there's some fishermen who may need it. So I think we really ought to examine those recommendations seriously.
Well, I think we should too. I think there are a number of operations that need advance if anything were to change, you can't tell them the day before they're doing something else. You get a long, even a year advance notice or many months. So yeah, I agree. They need to be considered in forethought, not in hindsight. That's not fair.
Yeah. I
Including-
think that's with regards to certainly with the passenger vessel use. That's been the major, new use over the last couple of years. And I know this was brought up when we presented the report back in May. And I know Periwinkle already had some charters planned and all of that. So it kind of kept going through the summer. That's is what it is. So
We don't want
but
to
now
pull the
we're-
rug out from anybody without notice. Allison, you almost raised your hand.
Oh, that was quick. You're.
Well, I have to turn like this, and my right eye is half blind, so I'm sorry, but go ahead. Switch sides.
The part that I liked the most about the report was asking that the town do a survey of, that's the issue that just comes up over and over again with our town-owned properties and public access points, that we let all of the private property owners do their surveys, and then they kind of like
Yeah.
elbow their,
Elbowing.
I'm not, not always, but often. But we rarely do our own. And so just having those marked, I know there are some places where it's like fuzzy and maybe there's a legal question, but here it would be really, because we do actually have more of a town right-of-way than is currently being utilized. And I understand that we're trying to be sensitive to the private property owners and the condos and this and that, and there's been a lot of, as soon as we feel like the condo owners are impacted by a commercial passenger vessel, it's like, oh my gosh, we have to do something. But, it goes both ways. So trying to maximize the way that the public can use that, I think would be good. I also think there are a mix of really low-hanging fruit, non-controversial items in here that you guys do a really good job of pointing out, that it would be great if we could kind of just take those things out and just say, okay, let's do these things. Let's do the safety equipment. Let's do the boundary survey. Let's put some signage up about the Cove Road parking lot. Let's make sure that that stops being abused so much by the people that really seem to know that it exists it's like long-term storage of contractor vehicles. A lot of the time you go there and it's not even a single boat trailer that's there. And I don't know how much enforcement is happening.
In the parking lot.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of places in that area where we've said no street parking is allowed, and that's been done understandably to try to be sensitive to the private property owners. But again, like looking at the, the public value of that property. Anyway, it would be great if we could like actually move forward on some of these recommendations without having it be tied to, we don't need to wait to know what's going to happen with the breakwater before we put safety equipment out there, things like that. So I don't know how we would, maybe we could direct Steve to identify some of these items that would be ready for immediate implementation,
Audrey, what do you
or?
recommend? This is your staff. How should we approach surveying or trying to look at this area? Because it's kind of a multifaceted amoeba.
Well, I mean, I definitely would ask
Warm.
Steve
Of
before
course.
you ask me about that, so.
Of course.
I'd be really hesitant to do the registration for commercial
Yeah.
uses at this point, because I think there's a lot, and it would be hard, do we count the summer camps? Do we count there's a lot happening there that is semi-commercial in nature or very commercial in nature, and it's not that I don't see that there's a need to do that in the long term, but it just seems like it would take a lot of like staff and enforcement time right now, and it could really divert a lot of energy. I'd rather try to deal with problems that come up on a case-by-case.
We were thinking with a
basis.
lot of that, like with the commercial haulers, people who literally make money off of hauling from that location. It seems like that would be a fairly easy thing to say, okay, if you're using this, just tell us, just register with the town so that we know. Because we honestly went around and we're like, oh, so who's using it? So Ed Hurlburt, maybe, Yachting
Oh, yeah,
Solutions.
that's true.
There's a couple, and we were like, well, who is it? So we thought, well, if we created just a registration system, so then you'd at least know about it. In Rockport, I don't know if you have to register in Rockport, but you do have to pay to use the ramp in Rockport for a commercial
Yep.
haul. So, we're like, well, maybe we
That's
could.
just for hauling?
Just for using the ramp, yeah.
Yep.
Just for using the ramp.
When you're a commercial entity,
you're a
so
commer-
Ed has to pay a fee.
I see.
If I'm hauling my dinghy, it's just a dinghy, I'm a private citizen, I'm not
Well,
running a
right.
business doing that. But if Ed, does it, that's a business.
Sure.
What if Dominic Fontaine does it for his dinghy that he rents to the, does Dominic have to register? Or?
It does gray zones for sure, but this thing, go ahead, Sophie, you had something.
I think, the way the Harbor Committee looked at it, if I'm not mistaken, Josh, is really putting public access as the frame of reference,
As a priority.
as a priority, making sure that we maintain public access, so people with dinghies and kayaks can come and use it. Less commercial access at Steamboat Landing, I think, is one thing that.
Yeah, that's what,
It's
when we
really
went and looked at why they created it in 2001, that was what it was for. It was for a public launching facility.
I see.
So, and that's how it was used for a long, long time. And so we did put that at the forefront and said, all right, and what our biggest concern was is a private citizen who's trying to launch their boat, pull their dinghy out, whatever it might be, are they inconvenienced by anything else that might be going on? So, because, launching a larger boat on a commercial hauling system, that takes a little longer than if you're just on a trailer behind a pickup truck kind of
Right.
situation. So that's what we're sort of protecting against.
Yep.
We're
And
protecting.
of course, all of these would also be competitor Slime and Morse. And so,
No.
there's a little bit of that.
We don't actually have a ramp at Lime Morse. We don't do any hauling via a ramp.
Well, if
But
you have
also-
your boat stored with Lime and Morse, then you don't have an issue with getting it launched, or,
I guess
I
I
mean,
don't.
some of the, I do think there's like a little bit of sensitivity about the fact that Lime and Morse is in a butter, and
But you could,
there's
but you
there's
could,
some of the commercial uses
Wait,
of that property.
I guess I
are-
need to know more. Are you saying I guess I need to know more about what you're saying. Are you saying that Lime and Morse should be involved with this, or I shouldn't be because I work for Lyman Morse, or where are we going
I
with
don't,
that?
it's something that gets brought up to me about, and so I think we do need to, I'd like to be able to have a good answer sometimes about why it's, does Lyman Morse have a vested interest in
Steamboat?
Steamboat Landing? And if this, I think the same thing would be said if we were developing rules for a park that were, next to my house or something that, that commercial uses are, some of the commercial uses there are, quote unquote, competitors to.
No, they're not.
Not really.
No.
No.
They're not, because if I have Ed howl my boat at Steamboat Landing, I cannot put it at Lyman Morris. Lyman they have to pull it from me
With their crane.
with their crane. You can't,
They're, what, I mean, we don't,
No, I
I just want to
think-
put that out, but we
Yeah,
could
I
get
think that's
into the
important to
nitty-gritty
know.
of it.
I
Like,
don't think there's competition. It's not the same services.
There are definitely other companies that provide storage. I mean, I have a vested interest here too, I guess you could say, because of Safe Harbors. My husband works for
Yeah.
Safe Harbors, and they may absolutely launch boats, or have in the past launched boats there. So, and
boats
there are definitely customers that choose to store their boats with Lyman Morris rather than, Safe Harbors, which is a competing company. And so having a company that stores their boats elsewhere, and then those people, their boats getting launched, to get out to their mooring or whatever, that is definitely a competitor. I don't see it as like a major thing, but I do see it as in terms of making sure that the
Yeah. I think that's going to bring us back to center stage, Audra. Whatever we do here, you need direction from us.
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, very simply, is to evaluate increasing, maximizing public use of Steamboat Landing while at the same time minimizing the commercial use.
wow, that
I mean, that's a vague, broad thing.
It is.
to give me
So I'm
direction.
just
That's not like a directionless direction, because I think what Steve and I need is, are you going to allow commercial operators to use Steamboat Landing? And do you want it to be informal, kind of like it is now? And fine, we can just sort of keep on going as we are and manage problems on sort of like a case-by-case basis, which is fine. That is a direction.
Sure.
Or do you want a little more formality around how many,
What's allowed, what's not allowed.
the type of commercial operators you want
Right.
operating from there?
No, that was, I'm sorry, Tom's next.
Can we get a, for example, maybe Steve, I don't know, Audra, who knows best, but we just came off a 6-month boating season. Did we have any issues or conflicts over there? There was a commercial,
Passenger.
passenger, were there any moments where, we said to ourselves, we need to come up with a comprehensive plan for Steamboat Landing? Incidents?
I mean, I would say that the commercial operators that we have over there now, it's manageable. There's some little things that have come up, but I think that by and large, we've been able to work with the operator, we've been able to work with, other users to figure it out. But I would say that, there's more interest from commercial operators in using that area. We found, I think Josh and Sophie sent me something that popped up in the paper about a new, another
A pilot
business
cutter
that would
that's going to
wanna
come to
load and
Camden.
unload at Steamboat Landing and
It's-
operate out of Camden Harbor.
Load
so-
and unload what?
Passengers
And probably,
More than that.
goods. as
and
well.
goods, yeah, because it's going to be overnight cruises. I think the issue is right now we're at capacity, and we really need to have clear guidance on what we're allowing at Steamboat. So public, I think everybody's clear on public. I think fishermen are protected, so there's not a lot we can do about that, and they tend to respect the 10-minute, onloading, offloading. I think the real issue we're having is passenger boats that may stay longer, that don't have a permit, are not regulated, and we don't know about it until it's too late to say, no, you can't do this for this season. So I really think right now, that's the crux.
Okay.
Now, thinking more long-term, there are long-term recommendations in this report that we rethink Steamboat Landing and we rebuild it, and maybe have a different design that can accommodate more dinghies, that can accommodate more commercial usage. But the issue we're going to be facing very quickly is that Steamboat Landing is going to be above capacity. And what do we do then? We're going to have too many boats, too many commercial boats trying to use Steamboat Landing, and some of them not registered, not regulated, not permitted. So to me, that's the decision we need to make now on what we're going to allow in next season so that everybody can prepare,
Commercial-wise.
commercial-wise.
Okay. Allison?
I'm definitely not ready to restrict any of the current uses. I'd like to see us start with things like understanding where the boundaries are and having some firm things like that. But as soon as you get into defining commercial passenger vessel even, how many passengers does that mean? Is that 4 passengers? Is that 5, 6, 7? So you get into that. Then even, with commercial uses, some public access is enabled by commercial uses. So people being able to go out on these boats is public access. So in some cases, we have a partnership with an existing business. It's the same with the day sailors in some ways.
But the day
It's
sailors
not-
are permitted.
What?
They have permits
Sure,
and
well, I mean, in this
licenses.
particular case, we could solve the situation by giving them a license over to, is it better if they operate on the public landing and park by
We
the
just-
Village Green? Sure, that's something.
Well, that's,
But-
you're,
I don't think that we should be in the business of restricting things right now before there are other things that we can do to make the area more accessible and usable for the public that we haven't done, like enforcing parking in the Cove Road parking lot and things like that. So I'd like us to focus on that and not on shutting
we're
down people's
talking-
businesses. I mean, can you launch kayaks from there? Could Main Sport come and launch a bunch of kayaks? I don't want to shut down that kind of thing because I think a lot of that is helpful for people accessing.
I don't want, Stephanie, Tom, do you want to make any comments? I've heard
No,
from,
I actually echo almost every single thing that Allison is saying right now. I would be very hesitant to restrict any sort of commercial at this moment when there are other things that we could do to make it a better.
And I just haven't heard, I mean, like, I understand we really ought to have a long-term plan there, but I haven't heard anybody say that it was unmanageable this summer. What does at capacity mean? I don't know, unless somebody says, well, there were 10 conflicts over there and the Camden Police had to be called to 8 of them or something. I don't know.
have there been any conflicts from your perspective, Audra?
I mean, that's a better
Past
question for Steve.
Steve?
Poor guy.
There was definitely a lot of use this year, but there was no conflicts, Well, yeah, obviously.
It's all a matter of perspective.
I'm not sure, if I don't hear about it, then it didn't happen. It wasn't that bad of a conflict, right? No one lost a tooth. I go by there a lot in the summer, and especially in August. You almost stop by, and I almost want to get involved because you're like, just pull up, let that. But then it just works out, Could it go a little smoother? Yeah, but you got a lot of folks that they had never launched a boat before, so you're gonna have to ski.
Sure.
You're kind of like, ugh, come on, guy. But it works out. I think the one thing you could do, like for me, Section 5, in the ordinance, in launching ramp, it does give me no teeth. It doesn't. I'm not gonna read it to you. You probably know it. It gives me no idea of how I'm supposed to manage that or what we're supposed to allow. So
Can
I-
you read that? We don't have that memorized.
Yeah, Section 5, launching ramp. The harbor master shall have jurisdiction over the municipal launching ramp located off Steamboat Landing Road. Vehicles, vessels, trailers, and/or cradles shall not be left on the ramp at any time. Vessels shall not be left unattended while attached to the launching ramp floats, except that dinghies, tenders, skiffs, and other watercrafts can be regularly tied to the southwest side of the floats in accordance with Article 5, Section 1. Vehicles, trailers, and vessels shall be parked in designated areas in accordance with the Camden parking regulations. Period. That's all it says.
But are we in for it? I mean, we could have, I saw some recommendations in there that were like, put up signage that explains the existing rules, more,
What do
I
you
hate to sound
recommend?
like, well, let's just enforce the existing rules.
Was
but-
that?
Do you recommend changes? in
Yeah,
that?
I've written this down for you. I wrote this about 2 months ago. A launching ramp, this is to be put into Article 5, Section 5. This launching ramp is intended to serve the general boating public as a place to launch and retrieve vessels. Any commercial vessel and/or enterprise that is going to generate income while using this system shall register for a permit from the town of Camden. The harbor master will advise the town manager and/or the select board on how many passenger-carrying vessels and/or commercial fishing vessels shall be able to attain permits for the system. If any permit holder is negatively affecting the launch ramp and its operations, the harbor master can revoke the permit with select board approval. Criteria for application approval for this launching ramp shall be consistent with Article 5, Section 3C in the harbor ordinance. The fee amount for these permits will be a part of the existing harbor fee schedule and be decided by the select board. That's a quick shot, just to make it so we can move forward at least with some of your issues. Why fix a problem if it's not a problem? I agree, Sophie. In the future, I can see some problems coming because it's becoming so much more a valuable asset, a used asset by the residents, by visitors. So
Who's going to make sure, go around and check to see if the people that are required to register are registering? It's not that I think any of this is a bad idea. I just see that we have limited, we struggle sometimes to just put those tickets on the dinghies, that are not, how much time is it going to take to chase people around Steamboat Landing and be like, are you making any money off of this? Is that?
Well, I think, yeah, I think you know at first glance, basically, because the people are either just using it for the day, with their family. It's a small 18-foot, 20-foot boat, or it's a, Quicksilver or Harvest Moon or Periwinkle, boats like that. We know this other boat that the gentleman called me up, a Hesper. He said, "Oh, well, I'm thinking about running a 3-day. I'm going to moor the boat, and it's going to be a 3-day trip. I'm going to drop people off and pick them up." And I was like, "Well, yeah, give me a written example of what you want to do with it, and you'll probably have to go. This exactly is because of that. Is that if that you adhere to the 15-minute maximum tie-up, so far it hasn't been an issue. 10 minutes, yeah."
10 minutes, 10 minutes.
Which
yeah.
we said we would
do some of the other
extend to
things
15
first?
minutes. by
Say
the way.
what?
Can we do some of the other, just that, everything that the town takes on takes time. And
Changing the ordinance takes, take us to
changing
next
ordinances
June.
takes so much time. We have had to learn the hard way. And so I guess I would support all of that if we could just first do the other things that don't require changing the ordinance.
You can do both. You can do both, but you're right, Allison.
Yeah.
The ordinance couldn't
A
get changed
survey
next
of the
June.
road. Like, we just should know what the town property boundaries are before we regulate all of the possible uses of the town property.
Well, I think those are specific items we can do, obviously, but I think, and we shouldn't, just because we couldn't change an ordinance to the next June election anyway. But this is a good time to bring it up because we'd have to have it ready to go by March approval.
We can be talking about 5 years down the
Steve and
line.
I just need to have an answer to give. This is people's livelihoods.
Yes.
They make a lot of plans based on what you say and what
Yes.
you do here, sitting
Yes.
up here tonight.
Yes.
And it's just difficult if Steve and I don't have a clear answer
So
to
you-
give them. And we say, okay, well, one person complained about a tour bus, so you can't be there anymore for the rest of the summer. That's not fair to that operator.
I agree.
We need to just
I agree. So you're
have
looking for
something to say to
specific
them right
direction
now.
on commercial uses of Steamboat Landing.
Yes.
We've already stated that increased public uses was just a statement. I agree, it's a general statement. That's where I was going with the second part of that, about to reduce commercial uses, you need to put a restriction on that you and Steve can enforce.
I'm not advocating for
I
a
know you're not, but
restriction
I'm
or
saying.
otherwise.
Right, but you're just asking for an answer.
I'm asking for clarity when
Right.
these
All right.
operators come to us and say, what do we need to do to be here?
Right, okay.
You have Tom and Allison.
Thank you. Steve, do we need to have this in place for the 2023 season, or can we manage another season under the current informal process?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone 21 years with just this verbiage. So, I mean, any more teeth you can give me, I think I'd appreciate it. Yeah, we can definitely, do that as long.
We can manage, but
Because-
for us, it's a matter of saying, they're allowed to be here. The ones, the commercial operators are allowed to be here doing what they're doing. They have permission to do it. And, we can, informally, ad hoc manage them how we have been.
The existing operations versus adding new commercial
I'd
operations.
say that, new ones, if they come in and you've said we're happy for you to sort of manage it on an ad hoc basis, that's,
If they're, the only teeth we have is they can't stay there for more than 10 minutes. They can't lie into you on that thing. So we can say, hey, you just were there for 12 minutes. I'm going to write you up, and if you do that 4 more times, then I mean, there's got to be a point where I can say,
I think it already says that you can
does.
stop things based on if you see a safety issue. What the ordinance really says is that you have broad discretion.
right.
But I don't know, I just don't know if you saw Aaron's hand up back.
Yeah, I
like-
do. I say, I never always recognize Aaron.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, you actually have, what I heard in that, when ordinance language, to me, showed that you had more authority than you might actually be
Yeah, I agree.
using. It's not really clear to me, Audra, so when I saw this agenda item,
I
it said,
don't want to put anyone in a position where there's a complaint later in the season, and based on one complaint, a whole person's idea of how they're going to operate their business has to change. I
Yeah.
want to
I'm
be able
trying to be clear that I don't want to limit those things. What
Yeah, no,
we
I-
want us to vote, it said it was just a discussion item.
Just, well, we still can get, we can provide a consensus. We don't have to vote. If
think we
everybody
have
feels that
consensus.
way, just has to say so, and Audra gets the direction she's asking for.
And the way that we're going to proceed is to allow the commercial operators to be there and try to figure out a way to make it work. That is the way that we try to work with the people who come to us and say, we want to do something at
And you-
Steamboat Landing.
And from your tone and description, you're okay with that?
Absolutely, I'm okay with that. But I just want to make sure that you all understand that's
Yeah.
what we're doing.
No, I
so
get
that
it.
if you
I get
do
it.
get-
No, I get it.
If you do get complaints saying, this, that, or the other's happening,
Right.
we're saying, well,
Right.
we'll manage it as best we can, but they're allowed to be there.
Yeah, frankly, for me, this is so amorphous in terms of, you either slam the door or leave it open, and let the managers manage. And I agree with Allison, I think there's a lot of leeway in that, for Steve, if he wants to crack the whip or not, he has, I read the authority in there to do that, especially the 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's huge.
As I stated, Section 5 launching ramp is pretty vague.
Yep, yeah, I understand.
It actually
it's
gives
not
you
the-
a lot of power, though, but.
Does,
It's not so much the launching ramp, it's using the dock,
The floats.
the floats. That's more the issue. The launching ramp, people are in and out, right? I mean, it doesn't take that long to launch a kayak.
But the general public
Yeah.
is just as big of a
Again, it
problem
depends.
sometimes.
If it's someone who knows what they're doing, but if
Someone who knows
it's,
they're doing.
if it's a guy and his
But the
wife
issue-
first time launching,
I have to launch a boat there, it's going to be
let's,
disruptive.
we'll finalize in a minute, but Aaron raised his hand. Aaron, would you come up, please? Or should I say Mr. Lincoln?
Aaron's great. High five.
No, don't get friendly with the harbor master.
Sorry, I missed you the last one. Aaron Lincoln, the owner of the Schooner Lad. So I don't use that commercially at all. Just going to start there. I also do not intend to use it commercially at all in the near future.
what are you doing here then?
But just going back, because I spent so many harbor committee meetings, and prior to the harbor committee that we have now, some of the recommendations I believe that were supposed to go into that verbiage or were being worked on were that if a commercial entity was using it, they should have some type of insurance to indemnify the town. Like that didn't end up in there. And the other thing was, it was like I believe there was some sort of like permitting process, but I think that the big thing about any commercial entity, and Dom, because he uses it more, he might be able to answer this, is that they're not allowed to have a printed schedule to use that property. Because at the moment you print a schedule, so I think part of the reason that so many people called me about the Hesper in the last week, that
Yeah.
boat that we were just talking about,
Yep.
is because they have a printed schedule already, and they already have an itinerary, and they use the word day sailor and windjammer, which in Camden ordinances are defined.
Right.
And so it seems a little presumptuous to some of us who've gone through long processes to be here.
And
that
do-
They're using those terms, and that person worked for me in the past, so they know the terms and they know the rules.
Interesting.
So I'll just let you guys figure that out. That's not for me, but it did make me think about the commercial aspects of that property. And I used the dock twice this year. One, because I had an awesome captain the engine died, and he was able to sail the boat onto the end of the dock. And I clogged it up for one evening until I could fix a fuel problem. So thank you, right? That's Steve using his flexibility to fix a problem.
You see, so you do use the ramp.
So I guess once I've used it commercially, and I just used it the other day to haul my boat out, and I was having a problem getting the mast out, and I was the one that clogged up things. I had no idea Mark was trying to haul out, and I was amazed actually how well everybody did work together to get everything out. By the time it was done, Mark was doing some stuff. By the way, if I'd known Mark was going to haul out at all, I wouldn't have even tried to pull the mast out, but I didn't. So, like, it was amazing to me, because I don't spend very much time on that particular wharf, how really everybody, Ed Herbert came in, and he was like helping me fix the ramp. It was so
Right.
broken that I couldn't
Right.
get my trailer out. It was
Right.
a thing. But it's pretty nice to watch that all happen. I was like
Sure.
proud of that, if you will. Like, hey, I live in a town where everybody just helped each other. That was pretty awesome.
It should.
Right?
Yep.
But I could see those two terms, day sailor, windjammer,
Yeah, I
printed
agree.
schedule,
agree.
no permit,
I agree.
and got it in the newspaper.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it made me think, how is that going to be used in the future? And
Yeah,
if
I would
this one
agree.
person does that, truthfully, how many other people are going to?
Yep. That's a good point, Aaron. I agree with you 100%. I think that's the core of the commercial uses, from my personal feeling, from what I've seen boating out there, is to limit what we have right at the moment while we're doing evaluations of many of the things we've talked about, rather than allow any further increase in commercial activity.
And
You have to establish like
it's on
a
the dock
record
that
of,
day?
Possible situation, because I don't know who's there currently.
I see.
I mean, there are some people, like, I know Dom's operating from,
right.
actually, why don't you let,
And he was on that dock that day, by the way, because I had to sail that boat in because it had no motor. Or it was another day, actually. I want you to know, he got right off the dock because I was bringing a disabled boat in, and he was like,
So,
doesn't matter, I'll just,
Audrey, what you're
Also
saying is
good.
there are people using this dock which we don't have any idea.
absolutely.
Okay,
For commercial purposes.
for commercial
But
purposes.
there's no,
Summer
but there's no
camps.
permitting, so we don't know
right.
who does it.
honestly, I don't think anybody is like using it in that commercial way
Yeah.
for the most part, other than Dom.
Yeah.
That's
And
probably
maybe,
true.
like the
But-
school boats and the fishermen. You could answer it.
I can tell you there are.
You need to come to the
Yeah.
mic so that people can hear.
Thanks, Aaron.
Answers better than me on that.
Thank you, Aaron.
Mark Bradstreet.
Yeah, Mark Bradstreet, Lobsterman. There are commercial operators that come from the islands to pick up and drop off, bike trips.
Yeah, oh,
I wish I could remember the name of the boat. I think it might be Silver something. So-
Quicksilver.
Quicksilver, yeah.
Quicksilver, the modified Quicksilver, not
Oh,
the
yeah.
Lincolnville Quicksilver.
right.
And they may be permitted for all I know. But I'm a infrequent user of Steamboat Landing, but a daily observer of Steamboat Landing. And I think I have a pretty good handle of what goes on there. And I'd like to just make a couple comments if I could. I was kind of waiting if there was public comment. If I'm permitted to comment, my biggest concern watching what goes on there is not how everybody gets along. I think everybody gets along well, and I think it's very well managed. It's the infrastructure that is the problem.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Josh's work in the Harbor Committee probably outlines everything that
Yep.
needs to be done.
Yep.
But I've seen some calamities that are caused by the boat ramp itself. Aaron got his trailer snagged on some of the concrete pillars. He's trying to get out of my way, I'm trying to stay out of his way, and his trailer, brand-new trailer, looked like got caught. And I think if I were on the town council, I would be very concerned about the liability that the town may be looking at. I've seen boats with twin engines just fall off the back of their trailer and destroy the engines.
Wow.
And now, it was the operator's fault, there's no question about that. But when you take that first plunge over that first pillar and the whole boat shakes,
Yeah.
the guy didn't have a safety chain tied, he lost that, and you're looking at conservatively $40,000 worth of engines that hit the deck and were destroyed. Not to mention, he scratched his Audi on the way out, which.
I see.
So the boat ramp is a major liability. I'm sure Steve and anybody in the town knows that it needs to be repaired.
Yep.
But that's the biggest thing I'd like to underscore. If there's something that could be done about it, either at the management level or the town council level.
This is a fun little video of it from
Yeah,
last
but
week.
back to, Audra, back to your question. Again, I'm getting confused because you're saying we don't know what's going on there. We don't have any control of it at the moment. So until we do, how can we?
Well, I don't want, I mean, I feel like we're in a position where we have a general idea of what's going on there. We know specifically certain operators
Right.
that are there.
Right.
And I feel like Steve and I are put in a position where it's either we let them do their thing there, or we don't. And I don't feel like we have clear direction as to what's wanted, and things will come up in the middle of the season, and we'll be told, you need to put a stop to this thing that's, okay, I'm going to stop talking around the edges of this.
Exactly.
It's the Periwinkle, it's going to be the Hesper.
Yeah.
Those are the two, really.
And-
I think it's, from my perspective and from Steve's, it's fine. It's completely manageable. Yes, we've had a few snags with tour buses, but I feel like Dom's working really hard to make that all work out. So
Please.
anyway, and I think it's completely manageable. I don't want to put him in a position where he doesn't know going into the season if he's going to be allowed to be there or not. And I don't want to put him in a position where we get a couple of complaints from people at the condos about the tour buses, and there's an expectation that that's shut down completely for the rest of the season.
Right.
So I just
The whole season talking about
One
it,
at a
'cause
time, please.
So I just want to get this out of the way right now, so he can plan accordingly, so that Steve and I know what to say if there are any like businesses that come to us and want to operate from there, because that's another thing. When we don't have a clear, firm rule about who, how many, when, where, we're just going to let everybody who's a like business in, because it would be unfair to do. to
Absolutely.
cut anyone out.
Absolutely. But where that's leading is, there's one, the Hesper, is it?
Hesper.
This is a new one that's trying to operate, or.
And I just want to make it very clear, Steve and I know as much as everybody else who read the Village Soup, because there's
Right.
nothing that's come to us that's official.
Right, okay. Sophie?
Yeah, Audra, thank you for reframing this. I think the issue is we're using a precedent from Periwinkle last summer
Right.
instead of trying to prepare for the future and having a clear rule on who we're letting in. And so this creates uncertainty for everyone.
Yep.
So, and if everybody can come, they just need clarity. Either we let it go.
That flies against the whole thing of reducing commercial use, increasing public use.
It does, and it flies against, the recommendations of the Harbor Committee. And they've worked a lot on this. They're not making those recommendations lightly. It's a lot of hours that they've put into this. So I think we really need to think this through and make sure that we create a stable situation for commercial operators in Camden now and for the future.
Recommendation.
Bob, where are you seeing that it's saying here that promote personal and restrict commercial? Because long-term recommendations isn't saying that at all. It's saying we should build 2 ramps. short-term recommendations is
Mm-hmm.
basically saying the same thing. So condensing it to those two statements, I don't know where, how are you coming up with that?
It's
You
just.
said it like 3 times.
Well,
I'm just like trying to look real quick and I can't see.
No, you can't, it's not in there. It's not in there
Okay,
at all.
okay.
No, it's not. It's the issue of,
You're just paraphrasing.
that's correct,
Right.
paraphrasing, because, on 1 year, I'm hearing there's absolutely no knowledge of what's going on out there, no specific knowledge. Anybody can kind of come in, and we don't have any restriction on commercial or anything else. And so it's an amorphous, I call it an amorphous situation. Do we want not to be amorphous? But from my perspective, when you have an amorphous situation, it's okay as long as everything's working. But we're also talking about doing some survey stuff and some homework and some work. And that suggests to me, if we knew what was going out there today, freeze it for what it is and hold it there. And not permit any more commercial boats in there, especially passenger vehicles. And
Are we
passenger
asking-
vessels.
Are we asking the harbor master to go out there and say, were you here last year? No, go somewhere else?
There's no
know,
regulation
Well, no,
that
I mean,
says
let
that.
me see if I can clarify this. We know that we've seen some boats, occasionally bring bike tours to the islands, Quicksilver. That's once every 2 weeks, maybe once every week,
Yep.
But now we have the Periwinkle, who ran all last year, and now we have this other boat that's called me, a scratchy line, and said, hey, I might bring my boat and do a 3-day trips and then drop people off. Right now we're allowing it, but I think Sophie brings up a good point. At one point, the town select board had to make a ruling about the inner harbor. I don't know what year it was, but I got here in 92, and it was already in place. They allowed up to 7 permits for the town day sailor float.
Correct.
At one point, they had to come together and have this exact conversation about this. Hey, there's people bringing people for hamper. Hey, what should we do?
Yep.
How many is too many? I don't know. So for Steamboat Landing, it is a public launch ramp. Its main reason. And we also, because the town comprehensive plan says we're supposed to promote and encourage marine-related industry. So I'm all for that, and I think we all are. But there is a point where there's going to be too many, and it's not going to work. So that's what we should be thinking about. How are we going to do that? Right now, like Audra said, we can handle, what we have right now. But you're right. If all of a sudden people are like, hey, I didn't know we could do that.
Well, sorry, this confuses the heck out of me, because one breath I hear we can handle what we have right now. I've also heard we don't know what we have right now.
Out there, I mean, it's like anything.
I-
It's like, can we handle the activity at Lake Beach? Can we handle the activity at Barrett's Cove? Well, sometimes it feels a
Trying to
little crazy.
quantify
Bog
it.
Bridge, have you tried to launch a boat at Bog Bridge?
I agree.
It can be the same.
But when
July 4th, you're going to have your...
Tom's had his hand up for an hour.
I want to reemphasize the 10-minute limit. I mean,
Right.
that to me is something that ought to be enforced. And if the commercial enterprises can't observe the 10-minute limit, or we extend it to 15 if we want to promote commercial enterprise. But it's first come, first served, 10-minute limit.
And it was really the tour bus. I mean, how much of the problem is the bus that delivers the people versus the actual boat?
Probably 90% of the issues.
I mean, I think the complaints that I've heard are about the bus more than the boat.
It's true.
And
It's true. It's true. It's true.
One more comment before Dom comes up. I'm sure Dom's coming up. The dinghy dock at Steamboat Landing, if it's not addressed in the Harbor Committee's report, is definitely over capacity.
We know that.
And a lot of dinghies get destroyed because of that. And I don't use it much anymore, but I hear people say every day the value of their dinghy permit is not very high these days, because there's just too many dinghies, and the risk
It's also
of
bad.
losing your dinghy.
It's also a bad location for a dinghy.
It is, and especially when you have to park next to the post.
And wave action.
I mean, and you can pay for a
Right.
slip if you want to
Dominic-
slip, but
Dominic, why don't you
it's
come
a
up
rough
and-
spot to be, but.
Let's, one more public comment, then we have to close on this some way, one way or another. Thanks, Steve.
All right, so I'm Dominic Joya. My wife and I, Liz, we own Camden Harbor Cruises, which includes Lively Lady, who's got a day sailor permit, and then Periwinkle. which we've been talking about a lot. So, I mean, as everyone kind of said, it's been, as it is now, it works. The biggest complaints we've had is from the tour buses.
Yep.
But I do want to throw this out there. I've never had someone complain who was actually using the landing about the tour buses.
Yeah.
It was always the condo owners.
Of course.
Or we had an employee from Lyman Morse come down once and say that we couldn't use it. But I've never actually, I've never had a complaint from someone who was using it. They come in, they drop off, they leave.
Maybe at the beginning.
At the
I mean, when they were
beginning, yes, the
backing up
beginning,
down the, I mean,
And they waited
Let
for a
them finish
while, but we
out.
didn't really know what was going on. That was not supposed to happen. The tour buses, we used to pick up on the cruise ship.
Yeah,
And then all of a
yeah.
sudden, they call one day and say, we're not coming to Camden anymore, we're
Yeah.
busing them in. And then it was.
right, that's the essential problem
Yeah,
here.
that was, yeah, for the first month or 2 years ago, that was an issue. But then-
Thanks.
Then now we just do the drop-off pickup. But, yeah, I mean, Periwinkle it's the one tour boat in Camden that does water taxi service. It runs year-round. It's,
Yeah, but we're not justifying boats.
I know, but I think it's
yeah, I understand.
valuable for
I understand.
Camden.
It does
Let me
provide
ask,
something
let
different.
me ask you a question, though.
Mm-hmm.
Can you load and unload Periwinkle in 10 minutes?
We do. We make it happen. Like usually what we do, I mean, if it takes longer, I'm on the boat. Someone comes in, we're out of there. I never leave the boat unattended.
I know that.
Forever.
I know that. I know
May have the mate go up and
that. Okay.
to show someone down or back up. If when it's busy, there's always a mate there guiding where the bus needs to go. We do not want to board the buses there either. We want another spot to do it.
Okay.
Obviously. But yes. I just
Thank
wanted
you,
to
thank
throw
you,
that out.
Dominic. Good to see you again. Audra,
I have a
don't
quick
we
question
have,
for Dominic.
just one, okay, we'll bring him back. When we did, the Harbor Committee put together the current Windjammer agreement, the current day sail agreement, wasn't there also a draft of a steamboat
Yes,
landing agreement?
Yeah, an addendum for
For
commercial
For a
operators.
permit for
steamboat
commercial
landing.
operator. That, I just want to point out, that exists.
It does.
And it could be utilized for commercial uses. Am I right about that?
I think that actually we created the check mark for it, but we didn't actually
What?
create the option for it, thinking that that might be something that
Oh,
the
it was
board
never
wanted to consider.
drafted.
But I don't think we ever
not-
created one.
It's not
But
complete.
we did recognize, I guess that's the biggest thing that I wanted to say is, there's really, and speaking as the Harbor Committee Chairman, we need direction on what we do with the licenses and operators that we are given. So in another month, we're going to get a list of day sailors that we are asked to review and/or
Yes,
approve.
yes.
And Periwinkle is a day sailor. It is operating as a day sailor, but it is not in that list.
It's not licensed as a day
And
sail.
so it is, so I guess that's what we, as the committee, will need clarity on. If you say, yes, you need to review these 6 or 7 over here, but if others come in and they say they're going to
Yeah,
operate
yeah.
from Steamboat,
Yes, that's where I'm going with this whole thing is you have this ability, we set up a system, the Harbor Committee did a great job. I thought there was a draft of the steamboat.
I'm
landing.
looking for it
Yeah, I thought,
right
it wasn't complete though, as I recall, because they were working hard on Windjammer and day sailor thing, but yeah, it feels like an amoeba. You know, you squeeze over here and it pops out over there. I think the registration, in some way, shape, or form, should be part of it, so that we can quantify what we have.
But before that, we need to define what it is, which types of commercial uses are going to need to
Licensing.
register. Is it just the ones that would fall into the category of day sailors by any other definition? Or is it, because we have guided tours going out of there for fishing trips, for, lots of different things that could be called commercial passenger vessels. And until
Because
we get
people are
that,
involved. For
Right.
bike trips or for fishing,
All of that
people are involved.
stuff, and so-
I agree.
but when the day sailors have a license at the public landing, they're getting a number of things that are not included with this when they're operating out of Steamboat Landing. I mean, they've got a booth where they can sell tickets. There's a whole list of things that they're getting. And if we're going to restrict the uses at Steamboat Landing, maybe we need to be more competitive about the we never take those day sailor permits for the licenses that I'm aware of and really open them up to
Bidding?
to bidding. We take the ones that are working there now, and we know that they're working, and we evaluate them again, but we never say, well, we're going to decide next year whether we want the,
That's correct.
and so that's why we have Periwinkle operating out of, this other
That's correct.
avenue, because
That's
they
correct.
don't have an opportunity to, there's no
correct.
competitive process really for.
Well, like I said, it seems to me, I'm hearing on one hand that we don't know what's going on out there. It seems the first thing you start with is some form of license or registration, especially for those carrying passengers of all kinds. If you don't, it's just going to keep, what'll happen is it'll just keep growing till it'll hit an overburden point, and then we're going to be knee-jerk reaction to cutting it back.
Passengers of all kinds.
If we did want to implement a few things, one is, survey and marking of that area, making the ramp safer, some repairs, and then a long-term plan for commercial use over there where we do start to develop what we want to use it for commercially and what are the precursors going to be for who are those commercial entities that could use it. I would suggest that the first two on that list take precedence for 2023, and we have a goal for 2024 of identifying the uses there.
Regulation.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to take time. We can't do it overnight. We don't even have an agreement, but it seems to me if you don't head in that kind of direction, Tom, we're going to be dealing with this year in and year out. Allison?
Thank you for centering us back. That was very nicely stated. I totally agree with that. The only thing in addition to that I would think maybe I could support would be, or ask if there's any value in trying to conduct some type of survey of uses over the next season. Would that be a reasonable thing to ask the Harbor Committee to try to come up with a proposal for how we might do that? Because there is a lot of speculating going on here, and it's all just we're all just saying what we've seen or haven't seen or heard or haven't heard, but finding a way to kind of solicit broader public input, first of all, because most people this is not ending up on anybody's radar.
No.
So to actually go out and log a certain number of hours there, noting the existing uses and getting, input if needed. Is there a way to do that?
Of course, you can have people registering in some way, shape, or form, even electronically, of using Steamboat Landing on Wednesday for XYZ boat to do this, or for the bicyclists, or
Maybe we could
for the
put a camera
fishing.
there, too.
Well, I mean, the old days, we used to do a sign-up log, but we don't do that anymore. Now it's all by email or electronics. But if you don't quantify it, it has the potential of growing beyond control, and then we have to knee-jerk react going backwards. That's my only fear. It just keeps escalating. When I hadn't heard about this other boat until today. I knew about Periwinkle, sure, I know it's been operating out there, that was very clear. But if Hesper, whatever its name is, comes in, there's going to be 2 or 3 behind it. I mean, come on, this is Camden, this is a sought-after area to bring, and in my opinion, at some point, you're going to get to a point, should get to a point of control. So Audra gets her directions, but until we put our fingers around what we have, I do think we need a registration process or some kind of a process that says you just don't get to walk into Camden and bring your boat. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. I mean, it's a public use property, and what we're saying is that we want to change the use of the property to increase commercial usage. Without any kind of regulation around it.
I don't support that.
I think we're setting a very dangerous precedent.
I agree.
If we don't set up rules for the next season, it's going to be interesting, but I don't think it's smart.
The dangerous precedent is that we don't do anything to protect our public access points. That's the dangerous precedent, that when there's a private property concern, that's what started all of this. And we're going to immediately respond by doing something to restrict uses that are both public and private. and not focus first. I absolutely support the longer-term initiative. All of these things are really valid points. I'm concerned about the new boat coming in too, all of those things. But I'd like to see us just complete these other things that every single one of us in this room agrees with that we should do. We should know where the boundaries are. There should be some more safety stuff. But we haven't shown that as a town, we can even manage that.
Sorry, this is not a knee-jerk reaction. The Harbor Committee made those recommendations this spring.
I know, and I watched some of those meetings, and not all of them were, it wasn't always clear what,
It's very clear. Their recommendations have not changed. They've asked us
and I
to
want us to implement many of them.
One at a time.
They have asked us to intervene at the beginning of the season so we could manage commercial use of Steamboat Landing. They clearly asked us for a decision. We are back at the same point, saying we're not going to make a decision again. I mean, why are we asking the committees to give us recommendations if we don't implement them?
I've talked to some of the people on that committee that were unaware of, I mean, basically, we're talking about shutting down one business that I believe adds a lot of value to Camden and including to the public. That's where this came from. I mean,
We're not talking about shutting any business. We're talking about managing a public utility so that the public still have access and so that the rules are clear for what commercial boats can use Steamboat Landing or not.
well, why don't we get the contractor vehicles out of the Cove Road parking lot then? If we want the public to be able to use it.
Go ahead, Tom.
Sure. Do we need it for 2023? That's all I'm
Yes,
asking.
we do. We needed it for 2022, we need it for 2023.
Well, the question, Tom, in my mind is a good question. But I think if you keep putting this off, I fear there's going to be more Hespers coming in, and and Audra has no choice but to do what she's done, and Steve has done, to allow these to come in, because we're not putting any collar on it yet. I haven't even heard we're able to define what's going on here. I hear some number of boats for bicycles, some number of boats for fishing, a new day sailor, in fact, is coming in there. Why couldn't there be 3 more? And Audra's she hasn't got any direction from us as to control that.
Well, that's why I like Allison's idea to take a survey in 2023 and see what actually is happening down there. And
We have to use some money to do that. Things cost money, and we have
Sure.
select board contingency, and if we need to.
Yeah, we can.
To hire somebody
For the summer.
to go out there and evaluate how the space is being used, that would add a lot of value to our future conversations, I think.
You need to quantify the situation, and people need to know this. Exaggerating, make a point. They don't have a blank check to use Steamboat for whatever they want commercially.
Or the Cove
Well,
Road
they-
parking lot.
You could ask them to register.
Let Audra's
Oh, I
heard it.
mean, this is all fine and good. Yes, well, we can do all that, but I mean, it doesn't help me for 2023. I feel like we're going to be in the same place where I'm coming back to you, in
You will.
probably May.
Well, then let's vote, on the next meeting, let's vote on this and give you clear direction that my proposal would be that for 2023, we do not further restrict
Okay.
commercial uses of Steamboat Landing, but that we, implement an evaluation and long-term planning strategy
All right, we'll bring it
for
to.
the area.
we'll
But
bring it-
she absolutely does need clear direction, and we can't agree on
Roger,
everything.
what we need to develop is a couple, in support of an action item going forward, some very specific option A, B, and C.
I would say that the Harbor Committee did a lot of really
agree.
good work.
I agree.
There's some of it all of you agree with, and
Yep.
there's some of it, some of you agree with, and some of you disagree with
Well,
certain
we'll
parts of
have
it.
to bring it to a vote.
So I think that report that's in your packet could be the basis of all of this, and it's going through it point by
Right.
point and saying, we agree with this, we want you to move forward on this, we don't necessarily agree with that, or we feel like we need more in-depth information. And I feel like
All right.
the conversation could be centered around that report and which parts of it you agree with,
Which action
parts
item?
of it you don't necessarily agree with or feel like you need a little bit more fleshing out, or what are the parts that you're never going to agree with because you
We can either
want to
do it-
see certain things there or you don't.
We'll do it bullet point by bullet point.
Right. I mean, it's unfair to take that report that had a lot of really good information in it and say, we want direction from the select board on this one thing, and because that wasn't the only thing in the report. And so there's a lot of
It comes
really
down
good
to-
stuff that I want to do right away.
But it has to be a consensus in the vote of three of us on each item, or not.
Yeah.
And that's fine, that's fine. You agree, Tom and Stephanie? Do you think that's a reasonable approach? Okay, I think that's what we'll do. Onward and upward, and thank you all. Good to see you, all sailors and boaters and all
What a
and
great night
fishermen.
for Mark to
I know,
sort of
I know.
accidentally be here to, about something else.
Now you can put stickers in the back seat of your car for people to read about the Steamboat landing. Onward to one approval of last action item of the. This agenda doesn't list the approvals, but it's basically to close Pearl Street on, I believe that would be is Monday, the 31st, as we do annually. Any comments by the board or motion, please?
Wait, are you trying to get out of the last discussion item?
This is not a discussion item. It is a discussion.
Halloween thing,
It is-
right?
It is a discussion, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh,
I thought you were purposely trying to skip over it.
No, I said it.
I'm just kidding.
I'm kidding.
So I think in the future, we could have a long-term, more robust conversation about the future of Pearl Street and the Halloween frenzy. However, this year, it seems that monitoring what the water company is doing there, they don't seem to have, the water company, unfortunately.
I forgot to put that in my memo.
So that's the main thing, I mean, and
Yeah.
that the water company unfortunately had to move forward with their part of
Oh, the Pearl Street.
reconstructing all of Pearl Street. The town's going to be doing the,
Excuse me. Thank you.
the town's going to be reconstructing the road and the drainage and all of these things like we've been talking about.
That Monday, they'll be out there.
Oh, well, I mean, their
Yeah.
equipment will still be there. They'll still be mobilized and,
There'll be holes in the street and
yeah.
Possibly, I mean, you can go and watch them. They're moving around, but, so making sure that they, first of all,
safe off.
have some kind of sidewalk detour plan or whatever, just for normal operations, but I don't think it's appropriate to turn a construction site into like the go-to place for everybody this year. And that one more year of not, I mean, people on that street tend to have mixed feelings about it. People in the rest of Camden have a little bit mixed feelings about it. A lot of people enjoyed last year because we didn't close down the street
Right.
at the request of Pearl Street residents. And,
Yeah.
trick-or-treaters dispersed throughout the town more rather than just congregating.
Okay.
It doesn't seem responsible this year with last year we decided because of COVID, it wasn't responsible to direct all of Camden trick-or-treaters really to Pearl Street. This year, we have a construction project going on.
Is it the kind of construction that can be safed off easily?
I mean, I would say, yeah, I mean, I think that makes the decision a lot easier for this particular year.
I see.
I wouldn't recommend kind of closing it off and expecting
This year?
that, yeah, I don't think it's going to be
Because
easy.
they might have to have a part of it closed off
I
too,
mean,
and then
If people are going to trick or treat, they're still going to go on the road. So if there's a construction issue there, it shouldn't be the construction part that's causing it, because unless we safe off the road and say no trick or treating.
I
No,
would
but it's
say
the
that.
volume, Bob.
Yeah, I'd say the volume of people on Pearl Street, and if you're sort of closing it off and having them congregate there, and then there's trenches and heavy equipment, and, I mean, it can be.
Other comments, board?
If there's holes in the ground and it's dark, it's dangerous. We shouldn't,
Yeah.
Any other comments? So I don't think, if we
No,
don't,
that seems
move
to have
on
one.
to closure, what I'm hearing is the consensus is no closure, right?
Probably, yeah, another good year not to close it.
I got a different hat tonight.
Uh-oh.
Oh, right.
So Beth Ward, Camden resident, also a Pearl Street resident, also a mother of Halloweeners. I buy candy for 1,500 children, and I am considered Upper Pearl, okay? So Lower Pearl claims they get a lot more than Upper Pearl gets, but anyway, we do buy And we can't just buy the little dinky piece.
I get
because
the
the
big
kid
ones.
stands there, goes, "You're only going to give me that much?" So, yeah, so we try to do the kids well. My children have grown up. They go do the loop of Pearl. They come back. They find it fascinating to watch the kids get candy. They enjoy giving the candy more than getting the candy. And we get to see all the outfits. We have a big porch, and we make it up. Before Randy Gagne was police chief, my children were very little. I had asked Phil, the old chief, if we could close it down. He didn't like the idea because of overtime and blah, blah, blah. But I was watching kids almost get backed into with the traveling car to drop off at each house so they could get out and run up and trick or treat. Cars are not the place to be on Pearl Street during Halloween. And if you're going to close it down because of construction, close it down because of construction.
We close it down, period, you're saying?
Period. Because they're going to be out there. And that,
Not let trick-or-treaters go on there at all?
well, I'm saying, well, if that's what you want to
Oh,
do,
no, that's not-
but you can't not close it down to traffic. It is
Because-
so dangerous. There is obviously thousands of people out there.
Especially if it's a rainy night.
Mom, dad, 3 kids,
As a Spruce Street resident growing up and a Mechanic Street resident now, that dangerous situation that you used to witness on Pearl Street happens everywhere else now.
Yes, I agree.
And I think it got actually a lot worse because of Pearl Street, because what you have are all these people coming in, many of them not even Camden residents, and they're like dropping their kids off at Pearl Street, and we don't have any, cars are just like whipping around. And so to me, it feels like, it used to be like Halloween was, oh, you're going to see trick-or-treaters everywhere, everybody's, a similar level of danger kind of exists everywhere. But with the Pearl Street safe zone, it created kind of this idea that you're like driving to a destination. So to me, it got a lot more dangerous in other places. And it took away, a lot of people that really used to look forward to having kids go around their neighborhood. You got to know your neighbors more, and they'll talk about, I don't get any trick-or-treaters anymore. I used to get 100 trick-or-treaters, and, this year I got 1. So
Logistically, I don't know how you're going to do this. If you say you're not going to shut it down to vehicles, then you better publicize the crap out of it. And
we did last year.
They kind of.
There was no construction.
That's the issue.
The point is, she's double whammy. You got construction going on, and if you don't close it, people, God forbid it's a rainy night, and then people are going to get in their cars and drop their kids off at every house.
It wasn't closed last year. We had this, we
No,
made a
I know,
decision,
I know it
and we didn't
wasn't- I
close it
know it
last year.
wasn't closed.
20.
No, last year.
It wasn't closed?
It was last year.
Also, Randy would like to speak.
Oh,
I'll get him.
oh, look at that. He's got his hand up and everything.
Where is he?
Sorry, Beth, didn't mean to.
It's all good. I've already bought my candy though, so.
But you're going to still get trick-or-treaters, just like I'll get some on Mechanic Street.
There he is.
Maybe just up in
Randy, you
Pearl.
there?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening.
Give us your opinion.
I think we need to look at the Pearl Street area long-term. We've had a couple of years that we haven't had it there, but we've also been pushing everybody into that neighborhood for a number of years, and the Pearl Street residents have been very good about it. It's time to probably not continue to do that. Let trick-or-treaters disperse out through the town like they always used to, and have a more traditional trick-or-treat. This year, along with the construction, which I went up and looked at myself and thought, how the heck are we going to pull this off? It's too dangerous up there this year. But I think we need to start on the model that most towns use in America, that they don't shut off areas to do that. Because what happens is everybody hears that we've got this area shut off, and we get 1,000 people that mostly aren't even from the area that are dumping their children here to trick or treat.
Right.
And sometimes we have no idea who the parents are when these kids get lost or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Because the parents come back later on. So I think Allison and I actually agree on something this time, that it's probably.
Oh, it's not the
Well,
first time.
So bottom line is you're suggesting no closure on Pearl
I've
Street.
heard the same, I've got a delay in my internet because it's slow, Bob, if I'm interrupting you.
No, it's okay.
But I've heard the same thing from other residents, we don't see anybody on our streets anymore. I can give you almost 54 years of history of Halloween if you've got time, because I celebrated as a child. I celebrated as a teenager, as a young police officer, and I've had 34 Halloweens. This will be my 34th with the department.
Wow. Well,
I tell you of the late 80s when we had pickup trucks with loads of pumpkins rolling them down Library Hill, garbage cans being set on fire.
Sure.
Airsoft, paintball guns from the Camden National roof.
Yeah.
Activated.
Yeah. Randy, let's take a pause.
This is a workshop talk. Like,
Yeah, go ahead. So, one second, Randy. Go ahead.
So if I understand correctly, we're proposing not to close Pearl Street, but because of construction, so how are we, marking construction or putting barricades or whatever so that trick-or-treaters who will go to Pearl Street anyway are safe, is basically what Beth is asking.
we have construction that happens
Can I answer
everywhere.
that?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, Randy. Any comment?
Well, I think we need to highly publicize the fact that there's construction, that's a construction area that should be avoided. We can use social media. We can get something out on our department Facebook page. The town has web access as well. That should spread fairly quick. We don't want anybody down in there getting hurt. I don't believe the pavement's going to be replaced by then, so there's a trip and fall hazard there, the construction equipment. So that would be a place that's avoided. Upper Pearl Street, if there's nothing up there, wherever else they want to go and disperse through town, that's fine. This year also, as you probably know, I'm down 2 patrol officers and 1 ticket officer, all of which who helped us on Halloween.
Right.
Have extra bodies, so.
Tom?
And if we're going to do public announcements, we need trick-or-treaters, reflective lights, everything like that to avoid the things that Beth says, so that vehicles, very, very visible. It can't be,
It's hard to enforce.
the dark.
High visibility with flashlights and things like that, anything that helps us in the public see anybody that's out walking around. And we're going to ask that they use the sidewalks and not walk in the middle of the street, which becomes problematic. I understand children getting excited. I have 2 grandchildren of my own that are ready for trick or treat already, have been for about 2 months. And, it's that urge to run from this house to that house. And, ask parents to really pay attention, make sure that they're not letting them run.
Well, if you're doing it, if you're doing the advertising you talked about to the public, are we advertising that Pearl Street is unsafe for trick or treat this year?
No.
I would say it would be a use at your own risk because it's a construction zone.
Right. Go ahead, Alice.
So I think we should be really careful about the town taking responsibility for the construction that's happening on Pearl Street, because it's a private company that's doing it. It's not a town project at this point. And honestly, the issues that we might have on Pearl Street with trick-or-treaters and a construction site are the same that we have all over town on a regular basis. There are, standards for anytime there's work being done on the road or the sidewalk. They're required by law to have a pedestrian detour plan, signage. They're required to make their site safe, and that isn't just on Halloween. And it should be it's the water company. It's a private company that makes a ton of money off of providing service to us. And I don't want to confuse people.
That's a good point.
And into thinking that this is
That's a good point.
a town project.
That's a good point. Did you have another comment you want to make, Beth? Then I'm going to cut it off and revert to the board.
It's my understanding that we have streetlights that we can dim. I would like them turned on high for Halloween place.
On Pearl Street?
Yep.
Or maybe everywhere. I mean, the problems exist everywhere, not just Pearl
Yeah,
Street.
well,
but-
so, okay, good comment. Thanks, Randy, too. I think we're kind of at that place where we need to give some kind of direction. It sounds like we're leaning toward non-closure of the street. We're leaning toward, or suggesting, not leaning toward, suggesting signage that people have to understand that's a dangerous place, just normal
No,
signs.
the water company needs to put all the normal signs that they're required to put up.
Whoever puts them up, there needs to be signage that says, this is a construction zone, and you're going to have to, the water company's not stupid, they don't want the liability either. So those 2 things I'm hearing, what else?
I think that's that's good.
I think that's it.
You know, in the announcement, I think Tom made a good point. It's good to remind people about reflectivity and
Yep.
all of that general pedestrian safety stuff
Yep.
that we've been seeing
Yep.
in these forums.
We
we're
have
doing.
a lot of reflective bracelets,
bracelets and-
reflective stickers.
No, I agree.
Randy and I talked about officers who are on patrol handing them out to people if they see them walking at night, so.
Okay.
Yeah, there's stuff that we can do in that regard, and we can make them available.
So those three things we're talking about, reflective, the non-closure, and pressing on the water company to put out signs to say, hey, this is a dangerous area. All right?
They're supposed to actually make it safe for pedestrians to walk by.
Well, whatever they do to make it safe, the contractor should know what that is. We shouldn't have to tell them. And if the sidewalks, they may have an area around the construction, but that's dangerous too. If
But
kids,
there are guidelines that they're supposed to follow,
and
they
that's
just should do
correct.
it.
That's correct. Any other comments, board? Other, we're going to move on to the next item, which is.
I mean,
Tom.
just one aside, I do work regularly with the water company. I'd be happy to write an email, or maybe Audra, but if you directed me to, I'd be happy to write an email over there and just say on behalf of, Camden Board, particular sensitivity to Halloween, we know that we're going to have more pedestrians than usual on October 31st, and make sure that.
Always do.
It's kind of problematic, honestly, if you walk there right now. I've had people bring it up to me now that they don't have a proper
I think.
detour plan, so, I mean,
think-
I'd prefer it coming from Randy as
Yeah,
the
I'm gonna say,
enforcement
Audra-
agent saying, hey.
Audra, if you do some in parallel, Tom, nothing wrong with that.
Oh, yeah, no,
You're a
that's
resident,
definitely.
and you know these people. Do it. Just do it. I mean, I would do it if I knew them. But Randy and Audra have to represent the town and make these communications, so that's what we'll do. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, everybody. With that, we'll move on to Ms. Audra's management report.
All right, so I've had some correspondence in a meeting with the owners of Lake City Floats about the challenges that they're having removing floats this time of year with the lake level as it is. So it's, the ownership transitioned within the past couple of years, and I think it's coincided with, floats coming out much later in the year, and misunderstandings around the town's responsibility to maintain a minimum flow and also do a drawdown around this time of year because of the fall rains. So, I think that's something that we need to speak to them more about in the future, because they are our partners in many ways. They're working with us really closely on, the unencapsulated polystyrene floats and making sure that none of those go back in the water this spring, because as of November, that's it for
Right.
polystyrene floats.
It's really the lake.
Yeah, on the lake.
And is the lake warden going to be doing some enforcement of that too? This would be a great time for him to go around and just tag the
Ones that have
floats
blue
that.
foam on them?
Right. It's the police, it's not Lake City Floats that's in charge of enforcement. I mean, they're really helpful with the education
Right.
part, but that it's a police ordinance, and
Yes.
it would be good if, now would be a good time for Randy maybe to
Remind everyone.
remind everyone.
Yep.
And save ourselves some pain and heartache next year.
Definitely. So I think,
That's a biggie.
so that one's a biggie, but also I think that, figuring out, because it's not like the lake is lower this year going in than it really there's been a few years where we've had drought and lake levels have been really low, so it's not exceptional this year, but I think that, with the change in management and understanding what our responsibilities are, and, anyway, we need to figure that out, because they're having difficulties getting them out, and this is sort of a new challenge with similar circumstances. I had a meeting with Coastal Mountain Land Trust about the Rollins Road parcel that the town owns, that's sort of the mountain bike trailhead for the Goose River Preserve.
Yep.
So they wanted to talk about, into the future, having some sort of formal agreement in place, or perhaps the town donates that parcel to the land trust, something to formalize that as the trailhead for that purpose. And, they want to do a bunch of work to it. They've already, I gave them permission to have their equipment cross that trail and also do some maintenance to it while they're doing maintenance to other trails on the preserve. But I just wanted to give you the heads up because we're going to work on bringing something forward to the select board. And, any sort of formal, easement or if we're going to gift that land to the land trust or donate it to them, it would all have to go through town meeting, so it'd have to go through the select board initially, so.
To a vote.
Yep, so just want to make sure that you have the heads up that we're sort of working on something and they're trying to decide, do they have the bandwidth to go through that process as well as the select board? Because we all know that town meeting does take time and effort to get something on the ballot. I had a meeting with the managers and the police chiefs for Camden, Rockland, and Rockport about a concept that the two police chiefs are going to work, they're going to flesh out, and then it'll be brought forward to the boards and then the city council about the 3 municipalities sharing a contract social worker to help with mental health calls. Because I think everyone knows that that's becoming a bigger and bigger share of the types of calls that they're responding to. And it's difficult because it's kind of like we're trying to fix our piece of a system that's completely broken, because there's literally no place to put these people in terms of, medical support, the jails and the prisons don't, it's not a good place for them, first of all, and second of all, they can't keep them often. So, this is our little part in a much bigger puzzle of a system that's just completely broken down and overwhelmed. So I think it's going to be a good thing for us to look at, and I'm looking forward to what the chiefs bring forward and the discussion that we have around it. And just wanted to give you the heads up that that'll come forward, and they're all very much aware of the budget process and that this is something that's in preparation for getting approved in that. But they just conceptually want everyone to understand the load that's on them, because it is different than it has been in the past.
Can I just say quickly that, that another area where Randy and I agree, or I don't know if he agrees with this, but I just want to say that, like, Randy is of any time that I've ever had any kind of mental health situation that I was aware of or involved in any way, the very best advice and support that I've been able to get from, like, any service anywhere has been from Randy. I mean, he would be the ideal person for that job,
If you weren't
honestly.
police chief, it should be Randy.
And, I mean, he's just really exceptional in that area. And so I'm sure whatever he comes up with as a recommendation here is going to be great.
Next.
So I went to a climate roundtable with Senator King on Friday. There were a number of mid-coast municipalities that were there, as well as members of the Island Institute, and Hannah Pingree moderated the discussion. And that was really useful because we all got to talk to the senator about some of the issues that we're seeing and where we think the federal government could be helpful and resourcing and that sort of thing. And I also think that he was collecting anecdotes for a bill that he has in with Senator Rubio about changing the way that FEMA functions.
Right.
So it's focused more on disaster prevention as opposed to just disaster relief, which I thought was interesting and something, definitely worth supporting, because it's sort of like a 6-to-1 return on investment.
Yep.
So we've had a couple of meetings with MDOT about the Rawson Avenue Bridge, and, just trying to, so the way that contract is written, they're going to be 100% responsible for the cost and the logistics of removing the old bridge and returning, sort of stabilizing the stream bank and trying to get it to a place where it's ready for us to put in the pedestrian bridge. So, it's just making sure everybody's on the same page with that, and I think that they've been really responsive with some of our feedback in that process, but there's still a bit more work to do before we are there. And I think we're looking at now probably 2025 before that's complete.
Makes sense.
Given there's going to be some right-of-way work that needs to be done, and it just sits in the back of a long queue at MDOT whenever there's any sort of right-of-way impacts. even though we're one of the impacted parties out of
Sure.
4.
Sure.
And then they're going to pay for half the pedestrian bridge still, right?
Yes.
Not just the removal.
Yes.
But they're paying for all of the removal and half of the,
That's pretty good.
Correct, yep.
yeah.
And those are my updates.
Thank you. Stephanie?
I have no report.
Ms. Romana?
So there was a meeting of the Harbor Committee last week, working on the pier moratorium and making progress. We also had the second meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee for the river, and that's going very well. People super engaged, so moving along, and that's it.
I had a couple Historic Resources Committee meetings. The first was the, yes, what do we call it? The review of the demolition proposal for a portion of a building on Chestnut Street. That went very smoothly. They, just to remind everybody, the demolition review ordinance is new. It doesn't, it can't stop a demolition of a historic property, but it puts in a 6-month waiting period if the Historic Resources Committee determines that it's historically significant. In this case, they determined that it was not, that it was an addition from the 80s that wasn't historically significant, so they waived the 6-month review period, which really is just to be used for finding other solutions or anything. So that went well, and then they had another regular meeting where they discussed a number of different items, one being the, just the general historic preservation ordinance goal that many have. It's in our comprehensive plan. The demolition review ordinance was kind of seen as testing the waters to see how much support there was for actions that the town might take to preserve historic structures. We don't have anything right now that protects buildings, even if they're on the National Register. A lot of people think that being on the National Register protects a building in some way. It doesn't. So, they were talking about that, and also a lot of focus on Curtis Island, which it definitely encouraged because Mike Scaling and others, I think Mike is actually not an official member of the Conservation Commission, but Pat is, we're going to work, they talked about how excited they are to be working with Audra on, long-term planning there. It's going to need some, probably a significant private fundraising campaign at some point too. So that was very positive. They did kind of go through like a, dream list of all the different things they wanted to work on, and we kind of talked about how we want to try to find a way to be in sync so that things that the committee takes on, like officially as a committee, are things that, that correlate with the goals that we've already come up with, but that if they want to do things that are totally outside of that, they could do it more like as an ad hoc group or something. So we're not telling them they can't work on things, but they could meet privately and do that. So, yep, that's that.
Mr. Tom?
No, thank you.
That was easy.
Well, the cemetery committee, Cemetery Association has been restoring stones. There's a lot of work going on at Mountain View Cemetery.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it.
And it's worth taking a walk through there. It's a massive undertaking to try to not only clean the stones to make them readable, but going through and repairing many of them. And so that's really exciting work that they've put a lot of work into doing.
Thank you. Just the construction from C Street up to the library, no, it's actually not, just across the bridge started yesterday. It was a week late. Nothing today because it rained out, but it's going to be probably 2 to 3 weeks of one-way traffic control in earnest from probably tomorrow on. Not fun. And I also understand that Route 1 North is being rebid this month for the work from the State Park up to the Camden-Lincolnville line, which if it were to occur, it can be funded. It's going to probably be 2.5 years of of construction that will have most of that section one way for, during the day. Yeah, that's going to be a fun time.
Oh, yeah, the Historic Research Committee asked about that, too, what the status of it was.
Yeah, they were supposed to bid it because, as you know, you approved it, Senator Collins approved some 10.
Right, she put it in her list of special
$10 million.
projects.
Earmark, but we're not allowed to call them earmarks anymore.
That project is 2,000 to 2,500 a foot for that mile and a half. It's because, well, you know, there's a Brook Hill there, which I understand now is not going to be, it's going to be a bridge now. That's what I heard.
Oh, well,
A
a
bridge.
bridge and not a,
It
it was going to be an open bottom big box culvert before.
No, I don't think they need that anymore.
Just going to do a full-on bridge?
Well,
You know, there
it
used to be a
won't- it-
bridge there
it-
until the town.
I think that's what they're talking about.
Well, that'd be much better.
But anyway,
I guess.
that's all the action. We got so much construction going on, as you well know, with
Mm-hmm.
paving projects and everything else. It's been great from one perspective, but I'm concerned about the C Street, that's going to cause.
Mostly for you.
Well, yeah, there's no way around it, but just the other day, they had one-way traffic control, and the traffic was backed up worse than it was in the summer.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that's going to happen, I'm guessing, people going northbound on Route 1 out of town, they're going to go up Atlantic Ave and take a left on C Street,
Go up
go
Atlantic
around it.
Ave and take a-
or they can go around to Eaton, right?
Don't tell everybody now.
Well, they're not stupid, they learn
Bob,
real
this
quickly.
is the way you get around it.
And then
They're going to ride their bikes, Bob, is what they're going to do. There's going to be a
in
massive,
those neighborhoods because of the amount of traffic. So FYI,
so ride your bike if you can.
ride your bike if you can. Other than that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?